All right, I'm going to bring to order the January 8th monthly board meeting of the Montgomery County Planning Commission. And Scott Brantz, Executive Director. And our first item of business before we get to our items will be a reorganization of board and election of officers. So I'm going to hold or ask for nominations for board chair.
Mr. Director, I'll make a recommendation that we appoint Stephen Klein for chairperson of the Montgomery County Planning Commission for the calendar year of 2025.
Thank you, John. Any other nominations? All right, and all in favor of Stephen Klein serving as board chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, Steve,
Thank you.
I'll hand the meeting back to you.
Appreciate the support of all the board members. Thank you very much. So with that one, we'll look for.
I'm sorry. Was there a second on the motion?
There was not.
Good point.
I'll second.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Jonathan. Should we do a revote?
Sure, yes,
Okay.
please.
All in favor of Stephen Klein?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? And back to Steve.
Thank you. With that, we'll look for nominations for vice chair. Nomination for vice chair.
I'll nominate Dulcie Flaherty for 2025.
I'll second that. Been moved and seconded. Or any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, nominations are closed. All those in favor for Dulcie to serve as vice chair for the calendar year 2025, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then our last officer for calendar year would be, is there a motion for a secretary for the Montgomery County Planning Commission? I'll make a motion to appoint Scott Frantz as secretary of the Planning Commission. Is there a second? A second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other nominations for secretary? Seeing none, nominations are closed. All those in favor for Scott Frantz to serve as secretary of the Planning Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Now we're done with the nominate with the organization. We'll move on to any board comments. Any board comments from members in the room?
I'd just like to say that I really enjoy Steve and Dulcie as being the leader of the Planning Commission. I think they do a fabulous job. I felt like a newcomer when I was a newcomer here. They welcomed me with open arms. They're always available to talk if I need to talk to them about issues outside of a regular board meeting. I enjoy the camaraderie of the board that they initiate and prosper. So I'm very happy that they're the chair and vice chair this year.
Nice.
Any other board comments?
Nope.
Are there any public comments before we get into our agenda? Public comments from people in the room, any public comments from the notice online? Bring anybody online?
No.
Okay, before we go into the approval of minutes, let the record show that we currently have 5 members in the room. Sandra, Dulcie, Jonathan, John Ernst, and myself, and then online we have Bob Blue and Nicole. Is Obed on?
Yeah.
Okay, and Obed is excused today. So with that, is there a motion to approve the board meeting minutes for our regular monthly board meeting of December 11th, 2024?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Excuse me, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or corrections to the meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the meeting minutes?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
meeting minutes have been passed. Then we have formation of our committees. I just wanted to make a comment about this. Last year was the first year that we only had 2 committees to fill, and we'll have the same this year because of the transportation committee. In past years, for several years, each board member served on at least 1 committee because we had 10 spots to fill between the Transportation Committee, the Montgomery Awards Committee, and the Montco 2040 Committee. We only have 7 positions to fill. So I just wanted to make sure I keep rotating everybody. Little crazy about it, so I have a spreadsheet, I can look through it.
We all have colors too.
Yeah, and they're all colors.
I appreciate you being able to keep track of it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, and I'm also taking into account for those members of the board that serve on the Montco 2050 Comprehensive Plan Committee, so information of making these committees. So with that, the Montco 2040 committee will be populated by Dulcie, Obed, Sandra, and John Ernst. And the Montgomery Awards Committee will be populated by myself, Bob, and Jonathan. Okay. So, and the Montco 2040 Committee will probably start to get information in the next month to 2 months. Right?
Yeah.
1 to 2 months, and meet with meetings being scheduled to review the applications for grant money, and the Montgomery Awards Committee will start to hear towards the end of the spring, and we're scheduling of a tour of the nominees sometime in the summer is usually when it's done with the Montgomery Awards in November.
Steve,
Yeah.
I have, and just as a follow-up to that, I just want to at least go on record by indicating that since I'm on the 2040 committee, there's a chance that my municipality will be submitting an application for grant money, and I would certainly recuse myself from that voting process and that evaluation process. So I'm just going to put that out publicly.
Okay, so with that, we'll call on our next order of business is the community planning assistance contracts, and we'll call on Eric to give us an update on where we are with 4 municipalities.
Good morning, happy 2025. We have 4 contracts up for approval today. Rockledge Borough, Marlborough Township, Lower Frederick Township, and Upper Gwinnett Township. And you have a copy of the resolution in front of you. And so do you want me to go through the kind of the work we're doing for those? Or you want to read the resolution first?
I know, let's go through the work that we're doing, the planners for each community, and then I'll do the resolution.
Sure. These are all renewals, so they were all existing contracts coming into this year. Rockledge Borough, John Nicholas is the planner. This is a flexible assistance contract. We've been doing a lot of park planning and improvement planning for them. We'll be looking to do some zoning and subdivision ordinance updates, and possibly looking at Huntington Pike as a corridor study. Marlborough Township is one of our adjuncts. John Lesser works for Marlborough. His environmental background is very helpful in working with Marlborough Township. We're going to be doing some selective ordinance updates for them with the subdivision ordinance and possibly a more comprehensive zoning code update. And we also help them out with grant writing assistance. Lower Frederick is also John Miklos, and we'll be doing some Zieglerville Village planning as well as some trail and connectivity planning for them township-wide. And then Upper Gwinnett Township, another flexible assistance. That's Margot Petruska, the planner for Upper Gwinnett. We're going to be doing a master plan for their Castle Park playground. That'll be a major collaboration, obviously, with our design team. And we'll be doing some grant writing assistance for them as well, and selective ordinance updates as they request.
I'm sorry, who's the planner for Upper Gwinnett?
Margot?
Margot. Before we get into any questions or comments, Scott, before us, we have MCPC Resolution 25-1.1 Community Planning Assistance Contract Resolution of January 8th, 2025. There are 4 contracts on this resolution. All of them have the same length of contract, which is January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2027. First one is contract 675 Upper Gwinnett Township. Total cost is $75,284, split 50% to the municipality, 50% to the county. Contract 683 is Rockledge Borough. Total cost is $62,304. Again, split 50-50 between the municipality and the county. Contract 685 Lower Frederick Township. Total value is $70,092. Again, split 50-50. contract 687, Marlborough Township. Total cost is $59,780, again, split 50-50 between municipality and county. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? Been moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions for Eric, board members that are in the room? Any comments or questions from board members from Nicole or Bob online?
Not for me.
Seeing none, is there any public comment on this resolution? Online, anything, Karina?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the resolution? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Eric.
Yep, just took a couple quick notes on the bigger picture. So we have only 2 more contracts to approve and all of the renewals will be completed for 2025. You'll be seeing those at the February meeting. And then for the recovery ratio, we'll be looking at all the numbers for 2024 in the next few weeks when all the timesheets get in, and I'll have an updated number on that and be able to start looking at that for this year and seeing how the increases have affected our charts.
Yeah, we can see if we're gonna have a board retreat to like Six Flags or something.
Eric, do you keep like a spreadsheet? I'm always thinking about a chart of some time, seeing the years that these communities have been in contract with us. So I remember at one point Upper Gwinnett was not.
Correct. Yeah, this is just our second renewal.
Okay, so sometimes that's just an interesting thing to have, not that it is so impactful. I mean, it is impactful for your work because it shows kind of the lineage of the relationship. But I think it's interesting, you know, because sometimes they're in, sometimes I know Worcester's been in, Worcester's been out. Talmenton has Talmenton ever been?
Not since I've been here.
Okay, so it's just, and then we can see the responses of the communities that have long-standing relationships and those that may not have relationships or those that may have checkered, and how they respond to policy and to grant applications. It is interesting, I think, because I know that Talmenton was not as active in some of the projects that we have had, whether they be grant, programs, and how it shows how the impact of this consistent work really does change the profile of some of these communities.
Well, we add to the staff essentially, and that's kind of always been our goal, is to be an extension of their staff, so we can offer the grant writing assistance. Obviously, when we're working on planning projects, either comp plans or order studies or master plans, we're teeing up all the time, looking for funding and projects and implementation. So how you having that continuity?
It really is, and I'm sure John can underline this. Managers are so busy, so that they often look at what's on the windscreen and they have to get it done. But sometimes applying for grants for projects that may not be up here, that may be, critical but not urgent, never get on their plate to do. And that's the kind of thing that we can help with.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe as managers have gotten busier, and everybody's gotten busier, it seems, over the last 10 years or so. Our grant writing assistance as an offering has been expanding because people are continuing to take more advantage of that.
And you also have a plethora of understanding of all the different grants that are out there because you've had experience, your staff has experience, and if not, our colleagues help newer contracted, folks from our office to really work with these communities. It's the resources are really so multiplied by utilizing.
I would offer 2 things to that. Yes, the ability to reach out to the county planning commission and say, you know what? We, in the back of our minds, have had this project that's been kind of, at least we talk about it. One day we're gonna take a look at this. And to be able to reach out to Eric or to Patty and say, hey, look, we've got this project. Can you guys take a look at this and kind of come up with a couple of concepts? They did that with our Railroad Plaza project that is still kind of simmering, until something becomes available, but it really does. It not only helps us think about ideas in the background, but it helps the elected officials know that there's something going on in the background, because they might bring a project to your attention and say, hey, we should take a look at this. And yeah, I got it. Yeah, they're working on this for us and we can show that. The other thing I would also say is that for me, what's encouraging is that we know that even though Telmenson is not a contracted community, they have received grant money through the process. So I think that there's a piece of that that says, hey, you don't have to be a contracted community to be able to take advantage of the grant money for your community. And I think that goes a long way as well, that, you know, this money is for everybody and it's not just for those communities who have a contract. That I think is important.
Any other comments for this agenda item?
Eric, the contracts are for 3 years, are our rates locked in for those 3 years or?
So when we approve the rate structure, there's an escalation in year 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and currently that's at 3%.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda is Perkiomen Valley School District Enrollment Project and a call on Ann.
Hello. I warned you this was coming last.
Yep.
Perkiomen Valley School District is interested in a school district enrollment study. They're a return customer.
They are a return customer?
Yes, I believe this will be their third enrollment study. Set to kick off on February 15th of this year and will be wrapped up by beginning of June. The contract is for a total amount of,
I'll take care of that in the resolution.
okay. Well, in that case, I don't really have that many more details to share. They have some upcoming facility decisions that they are trying to make and are looking for some additional data to help them with those decisions. And I'm looking forward to getting started on working with the school district again.
Before we take any questions, let me get the resolution. So we have MCPC Resolution 25-1.2, short-term contract resolution of January 8th, 2025. It includes contract 686 Perkiomen Valley School District. As Dan said, the length of contract is January 1st, 2025 to April 15th, 2025. Total cost is $13,770. That is split 75% to the school district, 25% to the county. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? Been moved. Do I have a second? Been moved and seconded. Are any comments or questions for Ann from board members? Any comments or questions from the public or staff? Or anybody on? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks, Ann. Appreciate it. You got any more coming up, you think?
Yes, actually, the superintendent of the Perkiomen Valley School District is also the superintendent of record for the North Montco Technical Career Center. This would be a little bit of a switch up for me. They're interested in learning more about enrollment trends at the technical high school.
Very interesting, very interesting.
So I'm trying to figure out how to best figure out what the trends there are. It's not really driven by housing construction. It's more so driven by students' professional interests. So, so that's a possibility. And the Wissahickon School District would be a potential for this fall to take advantage of the next school year's enrollment numbers. But that's a contract I'm working on drawing up.
And potential earning capacity without having to go to college.
For the technical school,
Yeah.
yes, that would be part of the analysis. They're interested in the career prospects of their current.
And with our manufacturing, especially our manufacturing interest in Montgomery County, it's a national interest of kids moving from changing their interest levels in college versus vo-tech. So with our high, the number of high quality jobs in manufacturing in Montgomery County, it would be great to have more workforce well-skilled from our own communities.
I agree.
If you find a place to live, it would be even better.
Thank you, Sean. That's the asterisk.
Oh, there's that.
That's not part of the enrollment. For the technical school. Thanks, Dan.
Well, you could.
Okay, next up is our ongoing updates on the Montco 2050 Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, and this week we are going to explore transportation. So I have Ian, Chloe, and Matt.
Sorry.
Who's starting?
Chloe,
We've got a short.
The North Star cast.
We could do a little song and dance, all four of us together. I don't know.
I was gonna sit down, because we don't need people in.
You know, you're, yeah.
Like the power expired.
Hi, everyone. Happy 2025. Nice to see all of you. This is the third topic focused presentation and discussion we've had with you. So, you know, this is about going through these topics with the advisory committee. We want to make sure that the board is included in the conversation, the discussion about these issues. We had a transportation focused board advisory committee meeting in early December, and we're now bringing to you some highlights from that conversation and some next steps, kind of aspirational vision statements and thinking about how we get to what the plan's going to really say about this. So, as you know, transportation is so integrally connected to all of these other topics that we discuss. We can see clearly economic development is not possible without transportation infrastructure, and all these both impact each other. Transportation patterns and transportation needs impact housing, open space development patterns, and vice versa. So we also wanted to just point this out that there's updated population projections from DVRPC, which I think Scott mentioned at the last meeting. The prediction is that Montgomery County by 2050 will have over 100,000 additional residents, more than are here right now. That's a lot of people. We have on our map hub a couple of maps about this. Thanks, John Zinker. But this one is a screenshot of one that shows the percentage increase by municipality. So just in thinking about transportation, we can't forget that there's going to be more people than there are now, and they're going to also be living here. It may not be exactly 108,786 people, but population is continuing to grow. And these are just a couple of some of the municipalities that are growing the least and growing the most. And just as an intro to the whole transportation system, something to keep in mind. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt Edmond, who's going to take you through some of the highlights of our transportation work.
Thank you, Chloe.
Can you go back to that slide, Matt?
Was that?
Let's go back to the map. If you haven't been visiting our map hub, there's a million amazing maps on there, and you should go see it. You can find it at, let's see, the easiest way I think is to go to montgomerycountypa.gov/Montco 2050, and then from there, there's a link to the map.
It's all about links now, guys. As I said when I was reviewing the work plan, all about links. Now that we finally, you know, some of us, not all of us, finally got into 21st century. Now that we can use these tools, you have to give them to us, because now we're hungry to use them.
I'll just point out, there's another map that shows the numerical increase, like the number of people, and the colors look very different on that. So anyway, go look. It's interesting stuff.
It's the percentages are so, the high percentages are in the western part of the county, which we've kind of had that impression just based on what things we've discussed over the last year or so. And what's happening in those western counties.
Right, don't lose sight of Conshohocken and Bridgeport too, up there in the top three in terms of percentage increase.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not wrong about the western part of it.
Yeah, you know, where there's the most land is where you're gonna have the most growth, it's just unavoidable, but also it's percentages. So percentages are not the same as absolute numbers.
Right.
And absolute numbers could tell you a slightly different story as well, but we wanted to put that up there just to at least have a illustration, right, of, you know, how many people are going to be projected to be coming into Montgomery County and living here. And it's gonna have an impact on what we think will be our land use patterns. So I'd like to shift a little bit to transportation and give a streamlined version of the PowerPoints and the presentation that we gave to the advisory committee a month ago. So some of the things that maybe Steve just strikes me as, I know you were there, I remember you very clearly. And so you've seen parts of this, but there's some of that that's been pulled out. For everyone else, it might be a little bit new, but we wanted to kind of, like I said, streamline it, and move through it and just talk a little bit about transportation and the idea of transportation. And then we wanted to segue into a brief discussion with you as a board on some of the outcomes from this topic here in Montco 2050.
One thing I would say is you and Matt should not lose the opportunity to take pop shots at John Lester.
We're taking the high road. It's had a month to work.
Good one.
Sometimes what they say, sometimes revenge is best served cold. Truth is in our fantasy football league that we've had for 30 years, I beat John in the finals. So enough said, don't.
Just add a little something, you know.
Yeah, don't need to make it professional. We can just make it personal.
Good thing you're not doing.
All right, so one of the most important things that you need to know about transportation in Montgomery County is just how extensive our network is. It's easy to forget, but you compare us to especially the other 3 suburban counties, and we have a lot more infrastructure than any of them. So just to illustrate, we have, a lot of highways, 4 interstates, 1 US route as a highway, right? We have other US routes that aren't highways, but in terms of highways, freeways, limited access, we have 4 interstates, which is unheard of. 1 US route, 1 state route, which is, a big chunk of 309 going through part of the county. And so you can see this web of red lines of highways. Highways are the lifeblood of our economy, whether we like it or not. And that's why we have some of the big places that we have in Montgomery County. But we're also blessed with ample transit. We have 2 systems. Everyone forgets that Pottstown has their own system of 7 bus routes. So they're out there in red and SEPTA's in blue. Bus Revolution is going to scramble this up a little bit, but it doesn't change the fact that you have all of these things. You have all of these regional rail lines, 6 of them. You have the Norristown High Speed Line, which is absolutely unique in our region. You have the intercity rail line, the Keystone Service actually stops in Montgomery County and Ardmore. 52 stations between all the regional rail and the high speed line, 50 bus routes, paratransit, which we can't even map. So there is a lot of transit in our county. If we think there isn't much, this map should show us otherwise. And bicycling and trails, one of the things that we hear from Bill Hartman is that, trails as transportation is a somewhat nebulous and changing thing. But we wanted to put it on here because it is part of our transportation network at some level. And we've always been a leader among the region in building circuit trails. You can see those in orange. You can also see the bike lanes in green. That's a fledgling network, but it is there and it is growing, and we do a lot of them too. So that network, all those things that we just saw on the maps, they shape Montgomery County. This was the map back in 1871, and transportation shaped Montgomery County then by doing probably 2 things. One was splitting off some of our big townships. If we ever wondered why there's a Salford, an Upper Salford, and a Lower Salford, it's because like East and West Narberth, at some point they said, we're too big and too much money's going over there, and so we need to split because people are moving here and things are growing. And the rail line's really good there. And so you can see Norristown and Kanshi and a little tiny Pottstown there in the corner. And they're all basically spread out along, for the most part, rail lines. They also show up in different places as villages at crossroads. So that's what we had. We had horse and buggy, we had train, and that's what created our early land use patterns.
Green, is that the map you gave Jonathan?
This map we made ourselves, and this is from Montco 2040, and it's our land use, updated for a couple of years ago. And all the yellow, which we oftentimes have called suburban sprawl, like that was created because we have these highways, because we have the roadways, and we have cars, which allow people to travel longer distances in shorter periods of time. So we still have our old towns and our old areas around train stations, but now the highways added another layer of growth and helped shape Montgomery County further. And so, this is just a reminder that transportation creates land use, whether we like it or not. And it takes a lot of forms, our employment centers, a lot of them popped up because the turnpike was there. So they were created by highways. Local towns such as Ambler, they were created because of the train stations. The train was the way you got around, and those are legacy boroughs, legacy places. Our residential communities, not always, but often and more increasingly are locating themselves around trails when they can, or vice versa, they're in there and they're hoping the trail comes through. And then lastly, we forget this all the time, but every intersection of 2 major roads in our county. Pick one out here on our screen. We talked about Germantown Pike and 363. That's Fairview Village. And Fairview Village was created. There's no train line there. It was created by 2 major roads intersecting. And it was a big village, if you ever look into the history. And over time, it redeveloped. And so, as the car became king, a couple buildings got knocked down. You got a strip center there, but the strip centers and the gas stations and the banks and all those things, they locate at intersections because that's where the people are. And transportation is about people. That's the point. So you have to remember, that we love to talk about modes. We all have our favorite modes. I love to drive. I like to take the train. Everyone should do an X or Y or Z. The reality is, though, at the end of the day, all of this is about people. People are using transportation to live their lives. These are stock photos, but I picked them out because they are good examples of people actually doing things because of transportation. You have a couple going to the grocery store, which, let's be honest, for whatever reason, they probably wouldn't be walking a mile or two to the grocery store and carrying back 8 bags, right? So they use their car to be able to go grocery shopping to buy the groceries. And then you have people in the middle there who are probably walking between their train and their office building, maybe in Center City, for instance. And you have people on the right, who are getting out and they're using our trails and they're getting healthy and seeing the world. So, transportation is really, it's a means to an end. And we all use it, guys. Every time you walk out your front door, you are interacting with the transportation system. Even these lovely young women, they are going down the steps of their house and they are walking to either their driveway where the car is or the sidewalk in front of their house to go walk somewhere. So literally, to get here, you had to use transportation. As soon as you left your house, you're interacting with the system. So you shape the system and the system shapes you. And that's the land use transportation connection. It is not simple by any means, but it is a symbiotic relationship that gives us the world that we have around us. So what does Montco 2040 say about transportation? We're going to kind of cut to the chase on this. And we're going to say all the different recommendations and goals that are in that document, they all kind of get summarized into preserving and growing the transportation system. They cover all sorts of modes, they cover topics high and low. But at the end of the day, when you put them together and you look at it, you say, this is the theme. It's to preserve our system, not to let it shrink, but also then to grow it where we can. Get more service, more bus lines, better roadways, whatever it is. The plan does not take a preference approach towards any one mode. It basically says all of it is good. So how does the county influence transportation? So that's the question. What if we have a comprehensive plan and it says the county should consider doing X, Y, Z? Well, it assumes that the county has tools to do X, Y, Z. So these are what the tools are. We have 2 departments that deal with this subject. One, of course, is us, the Planning Commission. And we do some interesting things. I mean, we manage roadway capital projects. Dulcie, after this meeting, you'll get your Ridge Pike image. We program our roads and bridges in the tip, which is something that we've talked about between staff and board for years. We have our complete streets evaluation every year because we have that policy. And we urge good transportation through the soft power that we have with our communities. And then on the roads and bridges side, they manage the bridge capital project. So really, us and roads and bridges together, we get some stuff done. So we have some hard power, some sweat. But they've really focused on the roads and maintaining things. So together, that's where the county has the ability to shape what it does through its policies.
Matt,
Yes.
what do you mean by manage the roadway capital projects? You're the project manager for new roadways? Is that what I'm understanding?
Not so much new, but any capital improvement to one of the 75 miles of road. So Ridge Pike is a good example. This was something that Roads and Bridges started with 25 years ago. And over time, for reasons I won't go into, it landed in our lap. And so we run that project almost as if we were Roads and Bridges ourselves. It's really interesting. Matt, myself, Lorene, we are essentially like PennDOT project managers.
It's really hard for people to understand. I was thinking about this when I asked that Ridge Pike that the county is responsible for these roads. And I can't quite figure out how they got that way. Maybe it's historical, but that's a lot of, infrastructure that we have to manage. So it's a big one. You think it's not by how big they are to people's vision. They're just historically our responsibility.
Right. And part of that's maintenance, and Roads and Bridges does the maintenance. They'll repave the roads.
Yeah, so I get that. I guess the further confusion is for me, the planning commission is managing road projects where we have a road and bridge department who is not managing the road projects.
Yeah. It is weird. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But here's the thing, Jonathan, right? So every one of the counties has this issue at some level somewhere where you want to get projects into the tip, but Roads and Bridges is not the ones that get into the tip. It's the planning commissions that sit on those things.
Because that's a planning function.
Right. It just so happens though that we live in some of the same spaces Roads and Bridges does. So you know, it's taken time over the years to get good at it and to know it.
It's our skill set. We've
But-
developed a skill set, so I think it comes to us because we have a skill
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
Not a knock on roads and bridges at all, but
Right.
they're not planners, so there are times during that process where I think we benefit from having our people at the front of that
Exactly.
project, and, well, it's an interesting situation.
Do we have more county highways than our sistering counties?
Yes, there's only a handful of counties in Pennsylvania that own roads. Philly's the biggest because
Right.
local roads are Philly roads, county and city are one.
Right.
I believe Allegheny has the second most, and they have quite a bit. And then we are the third, and I think Westmoreland might be the fourth, but it drops off a lot after us.
So I have a question along Jonathan's lines of managing road capital projects. At what? Is the planning commission managing all the way through construction, or are you managing up to the point where construction starts?
Yeah, we manage it all the way through, although Roads and Bridges is with us every step of the way. They're consulting engineers that provide, you know, their daily road and bridge services, engineering services. They come to every meeting and make sure they're part of it. In some cases, they review the plans on behalf of the county in certain instances. So it's not like it's just us and Roads and Bridges isn't paying attention. I mean, they are with us. It's just, we have that oversight at the end of the day to make sure it gets done.
So you're managing the schedule, you're managing the details of the project, you're managing the
Potential cost.
payment applications, the
Right.
cost
How about the budget? Do you
overruns.
guys do the budget too? Yeah, budget for future.
In a lot of instances, yes, and working with the engineers, and honestly, that's why we looked to hire Maureen. When Crystal retired a few years ago, we went after somebody that had a similar amount of engineering background and project management experience. And Maureen fits that bill very well, probably spends over 50% of her day-to-day time working on, at this point, the 4 different Ridge Pike projects. Some of them are in planning, some of them are in construction, and she's handling a lot of different items across each of them.
Is there a construction manager? Or is
Yes.
that you guys?
Yeah. We always hire consultant construction managers, construction inspection folks. But, you know, we're also are the ones that go between PennDOT, you know, because a number of projects like Ridge Pike, they have federal and state funds on it, and that's where the link started. And so we sometimes we have more knowledge than Roads and Bridges about PennDOT's processes and their formats. But like the big takeaway is this: by us having control of these roadway improvement projects, we are one step closer, almost, I wouldn't even say closer, maybe tight, to make sure that good planning principles get designed into these roads. Otherwise, you'd have to ask Roads and Bridges and hope that they see the value in good planning principles and put them in there.
And just to make sure, I'm not criticizing that, Matt, it's just a different function in my mind, for a planning commission.
Yes, it is. And it goes back to Lafayette Street. It goes back to the Lafayette Street project when the commissioner said, well, Leo, you got the project, you manage it. And then we took on, we did that, and we took on Ridge Pike around, 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014. And so we've been managing both of those. Lafayette Street's done now for several years, but Ridge Pike is the legacy, and it's still going.
So what happens when you do a good job?
Thank you for saying that. I didn't want to say that, but thank you.
I recall that the planning commission's budget includes these road projects, so it looks like our planning commission has a huge budget, but a lot of that is a capital project. That has nothing to do with, has little to do with the typical planning functions that the commission does.
Yeah, that's a good point. Our capital budget listed as planning commission is like $240 million, and 160 million of it is Ridge Pike construction. So, if that's okay, if I can keep going.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's
Concrete,
great. It's a great-
lineal, sequential, go ahead, keep going,
That's right. But it's a great question, Jonathan. I'm glad you asked. So we coordinate with all sorts of outside agencies. I mean, I always say that we are the hub in the hub and spoke system. A lot of things and people go through us and then go back out. So we have a lot of sway. Again, that soft power of having worked with other agencies and built relationships with their people. And this is the map of the roads and bridges, just to kind of circle back around to what you were asking about, Jonathan. It's a little bit hard to see, but the roads are red lines. Here's parts of Sunnytown Pike, for instance. The green are the bridges. And the county actually puts a lot of money towards these. We're proud to say that we have county commissioners that understand the value of investing in the infrastructure that they own. And we're involved in this stuff in a lot of different ways. Even when Roads and Bridges is running it, they still include us in some of the discussions. And of course, we have the Complete Streets policy, which is, the thing that we use to say, for instance, on the Ridge Pike, we're gonna put a sidewalk on the south side the entire way, and maybe on the north side if we can fit it into. It's this document that we created that helps guide what we do, and it's an adjunct to our plan. So this is the best part of the presentation. These are the emerging trends that we see popping up here over the course of the next comprehensive plan. And there are 5. One is remote work, the other, and I'll get in, I won't read the red part, but one is remote work. The other is online commerce. Third is electric vehicles, which may not have as much of an impact as we think. It is a pretty cool topic. Autonomous vehicles, which is another very cool topic. And then system maturity. And that's our big planning idea. So remote work, return to work levels going back to I think mid-November, even as late as that. Philadelphia was down at the bottom, return to work, which means that even in our suburbs and our communities in Montgomery County, there's still a lot of people who are working from home, and that has not rebounded. May not. You kind of see it in the numbers from the ACS, the American Community Survey. You can see where over the last 10 years, the number of people driving suddenly took a huge drop in 2023. So did the number of people taking transit, which is why SEPTA has budgetary issues. But then you can see the work from home. No one cared about that 10 years ago. Now they do. And we have the numbers to prove that roughly 20% in our county, according to the census, is working from home at least some number of days a week. And for SEPTA, it means that they're only back to 75% of where they were pre-pandemic. And that really is why they have an operating budget issue. Oftentimes, in the past, they talked about a capital budget problem, but now they have an operating budget problem. That's because fewer people are using it, so they have a huge hole. It's not that they mismanaged anything, it's that people stopped taking the system in large enough numbers that it created a budget gap. Second one is online commerce. And so digital retail sales have taken off. I think we all kind of know that. Brick and mortar has leveled, which is better than declining. But the e-commerce has gone up quite a bit since the start of the pandemic. We all know it. I'm sure you guys all have Amazon on your phones as an app. You get this one. Warehouse distribution is interesting. DVRPC, they have a whole freight goods movement group there. And so they track this stuff quite intimately. And so they have been able to figure out where all the warehouses have gone. And a lot of them guys have gone along the I-95 and 295 corridor in Philadelphia and in New Jersey. But what's interesting though is that Montgomery County has quite a number of them. And a lot of them are clustered in this area where all of our highways meet. No surprise, if you're gonna move things by truck, you gotta have good access to the highways. But they're scattered about in other places too. They're up along the Northeast Extension. They're out a little bit along 422, along County Line Road. I wouldn't say there's no rhyme or reason, but it certainly is much more varied than traditionally industrial and warehouse siting used to be. And of course, it puts more trucks on our roads. We see the growth, we have the numbers, comes from USDOT, and they're projecting up higher and higher. It's one of the big things in freight goods movement is, more stuff in our ports, more stuff on our train lines, Norfolk Southern, CSX, and then more things on our roads too. It's not to say that roads are the only thing that's important, but it's all a big network. Trend 3, electric vehicles. EV usage is quite up the last few years. The Inflation Reduction Act helped supercharge federal government subsidies for electric vehicle purchases and development. So people have been taking advantage of it. And we find EV usage to be basically in, the heart of Montgomery County. It tends to track where people have money. So wherever the affluence is tends to be where you'll see more electric vehicles, which makes sense because they are expensive and more than the average gas powered vehicle. Montgomery County is a leader though in EV ownership. So you can kind of see how the numbers went up. 2022 is the most recent data that we have on file that we could find. And you can see how the numbers have really grown right around the time of the Inflation Reduction Act, 21-22. And we have grown too, and we have more EV registrations in our county than any other county in Pennsylvania. And of course, the locations are everywhere now, and they are an issue. So this is a picture that we took recently from the Plymouth Meeting Mall. They have installed their own fast chargers outside Boscov's. And you can see here, there's probably more than you think, but fewer than we need. And they're clustered there on that map, just gives you a sense of the distribution. But there's issues about how you get these in, how you retrofit. What do you do on a city street? This is it's an AI image from New York City. But a place like New York or Center City, Philadelphia, North Philly, People don't have driveways, they don't have garages. How do they charge? That's a big issue that our staff have been working on. And this was actually from property on Germantown Pike in East Norton. I was passing one day and saw a car just plugged into the outlet outside. Because people will do whatever they need to charge their car. Trend 4 is automated vehicles. And we're finding that travel times have been going down for the most part over time. But people have been traveling a little farther over time, but the census kind of, or not since the COVID kind of scrambles that up a little bit, but that's where the trends historically have been. Commute time going down, mileage going up. But, automated vehicles are a huge question mark, right? Commuting could be fun. This futuristic image could be any one of us someday where, hey, I'll drive an hour to work because I don't have to pay attention. I can do work, I can surf the internet, I can scroll, or, things just like pop up into screens like a sci-fi movie. Either way, automated vehicles could kind of change how we get around. Maybe, maybe not. It's a huge if.
So what do you, if that should come to pass? Less transit?
Perhaps. My theory, and this is just me, there's a lot of theories out there. My theory is that it might change the city a little bit because, people can sort of car share, so to speak, or just Uber can just send vehicles all around without a driver and they'll just keep being more efficient. And that would hurt transit. Out here, I don't know. My guess is that not much will change. People like to have cars, and if the opportunity is, well, I don't own a car and just have an Uber come pick me up versus, hey, I still own my Shelby Cobra, but now it drives me around. My guess is a lot of people in Montgomery County would not mind owning a car and having it drive them around and not have to wait for Uber to show up.
It might have land use impacts.
It might have land use impacts. Maybe, maybe not. It's just, these are things that we're gonna have to work through as staff and figure out how we bake this in.
Think faster commutes because there's less congestion, because these cars are going the proper speed and nobody's doing anything.
Maybe 10 years ago, that was the thought, when the idea was that you put sensors in the road and that would keep all the cars in a perfect spacing. I don't know if technology can give us that utopia. Cars and people are messy things. And I don't know, it's hard to tell, but that was the thought at one point.
What about that, we're talking about all this commerce moving around because of people's online shopping. What about the impact on trucking? Because number one, if they were driven by, AI, would they be safer? Would we be able to move more stuff? I mean, I'm not asking you the answer to that. I mean, that's the question.
Sure. Yeah, there is a theory that, if you use AI and technology, you can, if not reduce, maybe eliminate crashes altogether because the cars will know.
Pretty remarkable concept.
I don't see the use of autonomous vehicles being anything with, it's not gonna take hold until there's large, massive changes, substantive changes to the roadway infrastructure. I think there's too many variables in roadways and change of roadways from the city out to western part of the county and further out to make it useful enough to substantively change the way people move through our communities. The variables are the thing that are is the
Isn't
most
the biggest
troublesome
place where
part.
they are is San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I still go back to, has anybody else in this room ridden in an autonomous vehicle besides me?
I have.
Great, so 2 of us, and I did it in Phoenix. I mean, they're mostly still testing in the warmer climates. I'm hoping that the Carnegie Mellon investment in Pittsburgh was going to kind of let Pennsylvania be a little bit more of a leader on how to do things in the rain and the snow. As it stands right now, I think the car companies are still trying to figure this out themselves. GM just dropped their Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean,
The car companies are still, GM just dropped their cruise efforts a couple of months ago. I think everybody is still trying to shake out how the overall structure of this is going to work. And, I believe that the technology is going to get there, especially within the range of our comprehensive plan out to 2050. So we have to talk about it as part of this. Right. But how exactly things are going to play out, what the federal policy is going to be, where people are going to feel comfortable with whether it is a individually owned vehicle or, participating in some sort of ride share. And if the expectation is 2 or 3 people in every sort of autonomous car. That looks very different for how many things are on the roadways. Ultimately, in terms of public transit and things, you still have the geometry problem. Things take up a certain amount of space, even if they are moving much more efficiently on roadways. They still have to get through space at a certain amount of time, and it is just more efficient to use trains, buses, higher capacity vehicles.
It's a huge question, and we debate all the time internally about what that means for our built environment and for our mobility. And it's something that as staff, we're gonna have to work through as we go through the comprehensive plan process. It's a huge.
You know, with, there's a huge difference between Phoenix, Arizona and, you know, the Philadelphia area, northeastern United States.
Yep.
Just the roadway system, I mean, are just vastly different.
Don't get me wrong, guys. I would love for us not to deal with this at all in the comp plan,
Yeah.
but we felt like it should be at least something that we talk about in this PowerPoint.
Well, you have to think big when we're thinking about this. I mean, I think you're doing the right thing.
Thank you, John. So the last trend is system maturity, and this is an important one, right? What this really means is it's a version of something that you may have heard from staff before, that Montgomery County is growing, it certainly is, but it's not the 60s or the 70s or the 80s where it's growing fast and there's still a lot of room to build. You know, a lot of things have grown, so now our communities are maturing. And so, you know, what that means for the types of transportation projects we do is significant. In the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, most of this map here, tip investment would have been roadways and highways, you know, widening things out to 4 or 5 lanes, you know, completing 422, like that's where we were a generation or 2 ago. Nowadays, with our region and our county largely mature and maturing, the things you need to do to make stuff work is smaller in scale and a little more tailored. And so, you know, what this map is all the tip projects, and some of those are things on the Schuylkill Expressway right here. You know, Route 100 is a big road, limited access, 422, there's some stuff, but by and large, though, it's not really a lot of widening. It's improving intersections. It's you know, creating roadways that don't connect, that need to connect, that they're missing something. You know, it's widening turn lanes and intersections so that it flows better without widening the whole roadway on either side. Those are the kinds of things that our tip investment is increasingly starting to look like. And that's important to note as we go through this comprehensive plan process. One of the questions is, what do we program here on the map to say what we want to do in the next 25 years? And most likely it's not going to be widened 422 to 8 lanes. It's going to be things that are probably a little bit more modest and can get through DVRPC screening process a little bit easier.
Is that because widening is, well, expensive, cumbersome to obtain the land right away? I mean, there's a need to widen because of traffic flows, because they're only going to be able to, I assume, making an assumption, they're only going to be able to improve so much by improving the existing roadway configuration or, you know, merging abilities throughout roadways. But the real, you know, looking at the numbers that Chloe talked about, the 12.7% increase into 2050, excuse me. I mean, the roadways are gonna get more congested.
Yeah.
Unless, you know, there's other means that brought into, so is that the reason why we're seeing more of that, is because these authorities and even the county itself and townships are not willing to go through the process of trying to widen roads because of the effect on timing, cost?
Yeah, cost is a big part of it. You know, when a locality of some sort is growing, take your favorite township or borough, right? At that point in time when it was booming, their municipal budget was booming as well. And so they were able to keep up with public improvements because more and more businesses and people were moving there and the tax base was going up. When you start to hit a critical point though, that doesn't keep growing, but then your needs start to shift. And so that's why in the transportation world, in the last maybe 20 years, we haven't seen the level of investment. And so there's been a move towards how can we spend our money smarter, use ITS, for instance, intelligent transportation systems, you know, widen the intersection, not the roadway in between intersections. There are 2 strains of thought in planning. One is that if you widen a road from say 2 to 4 or 5 lanes, you know, you're basically wasting your money. You'll never get anything out of it. You don't need to widen it. And then there's others that say, well, sometimes maybe you do in certain cases, and we tend to be more of the latter.
Steve asks why the first one.
We were always told, I remember, you widen the road, widen 422, it's still congested because more people are on it.
Which is the theory of induced demand, right?
But if these.
But does that play out?
It does and it doesn't. I mean, we asked DVRPC to look into this. They ended up having a symposium and they had all sorts of academics that weighed in and we kind of felt that maybe they had they had their conclusion in hand before they did it. I mean, in some cases it can, but it's nuanced. What I would say is it's nuanced. It's not that it happens the same way in every place. Some places it happens a lot and, you know, LA, because everyone has a car and there's really no other way to get around.
There's two different pieces. There's the amount of people being moved and there's the amount of time that it takes to go through them. So the facility with more capacity will move more people, but it might be doing it at the same amount of time and delay that you were having before.
All right, so let's take 422. You have X amount of lanes, you add a second, you add another lane, right? It's not all of a sudden that your people are in those areas that would use 422 are now all of a sudden gonna go out and buy cars. Right? Maybe to some degree, somebody will say, okay, I got an extra lane, maybe it'll take me less time than doing something else. Or
But they
using some
may
other.
eventually move to Limerick and buy a house and more people doing that, eventually it starts coming in. We were trying to get them to study, you know, they added the third lane on 202 in Chester County for a good swath of the area there.
But that's
A lot of
happening,
the
but that's
previous-
happening anyhow.
Right,
I mean,
Yes.
you saw, I mean, I know
That's-
it's not people, but you saw the growth in the western part of the county based on the projections. Is, you know, double digits compared to other areas, so that's happening regardless.
that is the land use transportation growth interplay of which everybody's got to kind of balance. And since transportation infrastructure improvements take so long to do, you have to be thinking about them as far in advance as you can. So that people don't say, I've been sitting in this jam for 6 years, what's going on?
Do we see less when projects experience widening? Or when roadways experience widening, do we see less congestion on local roads?
Well, I mean, it depends on the facility, but generally speaking though, yes, when you widen a highway, once you put the highway in, you open an area to growth. Because now the thing exists and you can't undo that. When you improve it, you know, a couple of things might happen. It might be that more people keep moving out there and now there's more cars on, say, 422 because there's just more growth out there.
Right.
But yeah, you know, there might be more people that say, well, I'm not taking Ridge Pike anymore because, you know, it's now faster to get back on 422 and they shift at least for a time.
But with money going to the intersections, which is gonna take 10 years, but there, you can see them happening, you can get through those constricted areas faster. Everybody's using their GPS, everybody's saying, how fast is it to get one place or the other? When those intersections now are moving more effectively, efficiently, people may make a choice, rather than going on 422, which is always congested. Their GPS says, go through here, it's 2 minutes longer, but you can get through, you know, without all the congestion. People may be making different decisions. I find myself making decisions. Who ever thought? I mean, in the past 5 years, come to Norristown different ways. I do, because I look and I see which is the best way and whether, do I feel like sitting in that kind of traffic or do I feel like moving? And what's 2 minutes to me? For me, it doesn't make a difference. So people change because of the technologies that allow us to make decisions all the way through our travel.
I go over Ridge Pike because I like to get mad at Matt and Matt for how.
Right, do you know the numbers? So that's what I want to know.
But when it's all done, you're gonna smile.
Absolutely.
That's right, the wall.
Because I live that long.
So one of the things about system maturity, which in a lot of ways is also a redirection away from simply just saying, all right, the solution to most things is widening to a more nuanced solution, is safety has become a big buzzword. And you know, I say it somewhat cynically that planning, especially transportation planning, it finds something and it loves it to death for a couple of years, and it moves on to something else. And it was pre-pandemic, we were talking about the e-mobility, you know, scooters and what's like scooters? Was that?
Hoverboard.
but not hoverboards,
That's what I was gonna say.
but they are cool.
I'm a hubby.
But yeah, a bike share, scooter share, like that was the hot topic from 2016 to 2019. So safety is one that has been growing in importance now in planning. And so we've been mapping that and we've been looking at it and incorporating it more into the ways that you select projects. So, system maturity is moving away from the old thinking of how we prioritize our investments, and it's becoming much more balanced and much more nuanced. That's what happens when
Circles everywhere,
circles everywhere.
everywhere.
I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want the board who wasn't at the advisory committee to know that we tried to make it interactive and interesting with our attendees. And so we ran through a bunch of things on Menti. Menti is an online polling platform because we wanted the advisory committee to get a sense of some of the pushes and pulls that you have in the transportation world when you have planning decisions to make. So, the theme for that was transportation goals can work against each other. We put up this really cool color wheel, which shows 9 of what could be maybe infinite goals for a transportation project. And they run the gamut, equity, sustainability, to access, safety, mobility. But anyway, we did this one thing. What are your priorities? We said, here's 9. What do you prefer? And we defined them for everyone. We didn't just put the terms up.
I just
But
wanted to note for the record, I got 100%.
yes, and Steve was the only one who was actually quizzed. He just didn't know it. So anyway, the top 3 that people, when they were forced to choose and prioritize and not equivocate, mobility and access and economic growth and revitalization were the top 3. This is mobility, this is access, economic growth, and revitalization. Bottom 3 was security, which is admittedly a little nebulous, freight movement, and sustainability. So it's just interesting to see our varied group, where they came across overall as an entity on which of those types of 9 things they found most important for us as staff to pursue. We did other exercises. I'm not going to go into them now. So this is where we want to have a little bit of a discussion. Scott, do we still have time? Where are we on?
We've got almost 20 minutes, a little less than 20, 15, 18.
Left? Good, perfect. So as staff, we sat down and we came up with 6 transportation vision values that we wanted to start to have a conversation around with you as our board. These are things that we felt sort of, they come from that color wheel a little bit, but we didn't want to come up with 9, one for each thing on the color wheel. Some of them you can put together. And so we tried to come up with the things that we thought were most important and most reflective of the needs of our county. And that's what we wanted to do. We want to throw these out to you, let you read them, think about them, and just have an open discussion about your thoughts on them. Well, what do we keep? What do we change? What do we add? And just so you know, these are not recommendations. So there's a difference between what I'll call goals and recommendations. So, safety has a very goal-like statement. Be a place for all forms of travel for all users. It's very, very broad. Now, from safety, you could have recommendations that say, well, we want to have 0 deaths on Montgomery County roadways by 2050. That's a recommendation. So as we have that discussion, let's make sure we don't use the 2. Otherwise, we're going to get into a huge rabbit hole and we may never get out of it. And yeah, it'll be ugly. But those are the 6. Do you guys want me to read them off or can you see them well? I'm not the biggest.
Karina, these are online, so we'll call it Bob if he's back on. They can see.
So
He's still on.
So we said safety, sustainability, a place where non-motorized transportation flourishes, that the e-bikes and the e-scooters, mobility, having high quality transportation options available to everyone so everyone can get around, reliability and congestion and an efficient movement of people and goods, equity, right? Realistic and reliable travel choices for people with disabilities, those who can't afford a car, children, seniors, a very broad type of look at transportation equity. And then economic growth revitalization, to use our investment in our transportation system to strengthen and grow our communities. Historically, that's been, how can we use that to strengthen a borough somewhere? But it can be a lot of things, a lot of places.
So anybody want to chime in on any one of these 6?
So what's the question asked?
What is your impression of the statement made under each of these 6 categories? And do you think they are appropriate for the vision and values that they're trying to, the comprehensive plan for 2050? Or should they, or is there something in them that you would see, changed, added, subtracted.
Yeah, if we were to have a page in Montco 2050 that says, transportation goals, here's our 6 things we're trying to achieve with our recommendations. That's what we might put on that page today. Is it right? Is that what you guys?
Right, but these aren't necessarily goals or, these are more like a vision, values, what the county should.
Values, I think.
Should achieve, should strive to achieve. Then within each of these, there'll be goals
Right, exactly.
that will be a little bit more specific to, am I correct? Is that?
Yes.
Also, I
Something
mean,
like that, yes.
we struggle to come up with the right terminology for what all of these things are, but yes, there would be action items that fall underneath these categories.
Right.
Okay, the county will modernize its fleet, and the county will do this and work with its partners to do that, but these would be the organizing questions.
They're the values, and every day for somebody, all of them seem reasonable to me, and every day or which one rate comes to the top depends on what's happening in my life, So, equity comes up when I'm sitting in my house comfortable and I'm not caught in traffic, Mobility may come after I, had my hip replaced, but it's just different. It's very different. So I think values are more important.
See, I see it a little differently. I see these more as definitely not goals, but values. And I think each of these should be taken into consideration with regard to every transportation project that the county is embarking on.
Yeah, I think that would be the intention, some to greater degrees than others, depending on the actual,
Yvonne, that's a really interesting
project, I
thought.
would say. I don't know.
Because they could be graded, they each could have a different color or whatever, and this one reaches, touches this, and this. The other one over here reaches this, and that. I mean, that's a very interesting way to think about it.
And that's generally how, when projects at the regional level are scored and graded by DVRPC, there's, I think, additional factors even beyond these, and everything gets some sort of, treatment from, it qualifies at least a little bit on region needs, yes.
So I'll make a couple comments. Safety be a place for all forms of travel. I'm not sure I would want that to be a little bit more defined. So in my mind.
That doesn't talk about safety per se.
Yeah, a place
think
for
of
all
safety as
forms
not
of travel.
Yes.
I agree with
You know what, when I copied this over from the document we were working with, we may have omitted the word safe. I think it was be a safe place.
Yes.
for all
That's exactly
forms of
what I was
travel.
Well, that would help.
Chloe, can you tell me I'm right?
You're right.
Okay, good.
No, I think that's right.
That makes it better.
Sustainability, non-motorized transportation, I think we should be looking broader than just non-motorized transportation. To me, that would be indicating, what in your mind, what is non-motorized? Is it just bicycles? Is it, skateboards, or is it scooters? Is it electric vehicles? I'm trying to understand.
It's really, it's anything but cars. That's really what we mean.
Does that include
Right, but-
coffee?
But
Yeah.
cars
Yeah.
are sustainable.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think that,
No, they can't.
The electrical vehicles.
that's what you say,
I think
that
I
kind
think
of,
Non-gas cars.
I would want it, the sustainability aspect of that, I think should include human-driven modes of transportation, but also non-fossil fuel
Consuming.
consuming vehicles also, or minimal fossil fuel consuming vehicles like hybrids. And, I think that would be my comment there.
Thank you.
Mobility, have high quality transportation options available to everyone. Yeah, I think that's,
There's a definition of high quality.
I think that's ambitious, given the systems that we have in place and the,
How about diverse?
yeah.
Steve, that's the whole point of this. This should be in.
Yeah, I know, but I think mobility should, instead of high quality, I would rather see diverse and more accessible or a wider
Accessible.
So just note that it also has overlap with equity as you're trying to work through specific,
right.
what you'd like to see in it. And to an extent, reliability.
Like the further you get out from the city of Philadelphia borders, you know, the transportation network really does start to thin out. The eastern part of the county, I would say, has, you know, with the regional rail and bus routes, definitely has, you know, but once you start to get past, yes, once you start getting past the turnpike, it really starts to thin out.
Yeah.
And I think there's if the growth of the county is projected to be X, which we've discussed, then the only other mode of transportation outside of the one we just talked about is more cars on the road. That's why I say when we talk about mobility and even equity, I think the expansion of high density, that's the word that's coming to mind, but high density transportation options are something that I think should be discussed or thought about in this.
From a land use side, you're saying?
No. Or talking about like, you know, more modes of transportation that could carry more people than me just in my car.
Transit, but more than transit?
Whatever it may be. Yeah.
So options that are efficient.
What else do you guys think about these? And Matt's right. I mean, there are things that will overlap at times. You know, the goal is to have recommendations out of this, and we're gonna have recommendations that could go in one or another, probably. We gotta stick them somewhere. That's for the future. But yeah, these are not mutually exclusive, nor are they all sort of just lumped into one.
And I guess the extension of the last one, which is use transportation investments to strengthen and grow our community on our economic growth and revitalization, is intended to be in coordination with the county's desire for how land is to be used, that land use map that we always go back to. So we certainly don't want to, we want to respect the fact that there are areas of the county we want to see preserved and lower density. We don't just want to use transportation to start to fill in all of those areas. I'm assuming that's implied.
Yeah, I mean, it takes two or three forms. You know, Lafayette Street Extension Project is one example of that, where, you know, we improved the road and extended it out, and the goal is to connect to the highway system to get people in there for revitalization purposes.
Right.
But other examples could be Norristown or Pottstown, for instance, say, you know, the county needs to actively reinvest in you know, pedestrian scale transportation in those communities, because that's what they were built on. And that's a way, if we could fix, I'm just giving an example, we could fix all the sidewalks in Norristown, then that would make walking easier, right? And that would benefit those communities. Or it could be the Turnpike Corridor Reinvestment Project. The 7 new and improved interchanges along I-276 that was envisioned in 2014 in that plan to help spur revitalization of our aging business parks. Like all three of those types of things, in our mind, fit under that. At least that's how we envisioned it when we were writing this up.
And my last point, I mean, obviously anybody else can chime in here, but the equity part of it, I think you should keep an eye on the fact that in the next, 25 years, I think you're gonna, I mean, Ian, you might have better thought about this, but I gotta think that you're gonna see a greater amount of school contractions, where school districts combine, contract their facilities, and what that's going to do is obviously it's going to put, kids having to get from, instead of them, I don't know how many kids walk to school or something, but I know in Abington, you have elementary schools all over the place, but as you get further out and school districts become more restrained in their budgets, they're going to look to contract those facilities so that they are not paying for 9 elementary schools, but they're paying for 7 of them. And how that affects the mobility or the movement of children to school. And that's,
And why is that, Steve? Because we have an aging population and not enough kids, or?
well, I think it's a combination, that's one.
Okay.
I think the other one is just school budgets. And,
The
you know, being
efficiencies
able
of
to,
scale?
yeah, and being able to maintain, like I said, 9 elementary schools as opposed to 7.
I
You
think
know,
there'll be a push to do that.
well, but there's a push statewide to contract school districts also. You know, there's always been a discussion about in state to, you know, to incentivize school districts to combine as opposed to having all of these separate entities, separate school districts, you know, that primarily stop at township borders.
And I think we did see this in like the Hatboro Horsham School District, just they rebuilt one of the elementary schools and they made it much larger and closed another elementary school. So, you know, it's like, there's a huge investment to rebuild a whole elementary school. It's nice, but they decided instead of then moving on to redo the other one, just build it bigger and close the other one, sell it. So it's like that kind of thing.
Upper Perk did it 25, 30 years ago. Close the small.
Right. I mean, I think those couple of trends in school districts is going to see a change in how students get to school and what that will do to the equity portion of this, the mobility of children. Any other feedback for
Editing
Matt, Chloe, and Amy?
committee.
Uh,
I said editing by committee.
I think the first two need to be worked on both the time.
Bass, Nicole, Bob,
I'm good.
great.
That's not too bad. First grade, a little bit of editing.
So what was that called?
I did sneak a slide onto the end of this presentation.
Question.
This one.
Oh, that. So you got through the question.
Real quick, because I know you're all chomping at the bit to figure out all the things we're working on in 2025. Next steps, we are shifting to other work. We'll talk more about this, I guess, in a couple of minutes. We are next month, hopefully going to present to you on preservation and recreation. That is the theme of our upcoming advisory committee meeting. And then slowly but surely, we are moving toward figuring out how to organize this plan, the hierarchy of things, what to call the goals and action steps, all of that. It is, and you know, continuing with our public outreach, presenting on some of these topics to our commissioners so that we don't leave them out of this discussion cycle. And drafting the plan, that's a lot of work as well, but I will talk more about that during our work program presentation. That's it, thank you.
Great, thank you. When's the next topic? That's in February, right?
Wednesday, the preservation and recreation topic, we'll present that to you, the board, in February. And then in March, presumably, we'll do people, places, and jobs.
Possibly. The advisory committee is addressing that in January.
Yeah, the board presentations lag, you know,
Yeah,
a month or so behind
Right.
the advisory committee.
Okay. Got it, thank you. Righty. We're right on schedule. About that. Yeah. Well,
Keep the faith.
by the time we get to December, we'll be 20 minutes off schedule, so.
Keep the faith.
All right, 2050 work program.
I was really interested that there were several files.
It's a rare opportunity to grill Scott.
I don't think so.
I'll invite all people involved in this presentation. If you want to come up here, we got more seats. That one, yeah, it's real fun.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's another January. This is our new work program for 2025. We shared a draft with you at the December board meeting and then updated that about a week later digitally. And as stated before, those were evolving in terms of, the proofreading and formatting and just photo selection, different things were happening all up until the wire of, is literally kind of last week is when I think we had the bulk of our editing, what we call fully completed from our standpoint. So this is what you have now on your in hard copy, everyone but Bob, and we'll get one out to you. Is the version 1, no longer says draft. However, I think we will end up having a version 1.1. Any comments from today that need to be integrated. And we got some good eagle eye views from Dulcie and any others, and we'll get those incorporated right away. So there will be a version 1.1 that we'll share after this. But this represents content-wise almost identical to what you did receive the last junction. And I'll point out any exceptions, but mostly more proofing and typographical corrections. Okay, so all that out of the way, we are excited. This has been the last 3 or 4 years we've been under this new format, which was instigated to provide a more dynamic way of looking at our work program, more tied to the issues, more exciting way of considering it, and also be fruitful towards our ability to self-examine and look at our needs and keep the work flowing in a productive manner. And my perception is it has served us well. So there aren't major substantive changes, but you will see a few more. Go to the next slide. Oh, I have it. So we start with the organizational structure. Not a lot of change here, although one significant thing I'll point out from the last year, we had our GIS section is now definitively within the design section's umbrella. Previously, they reported directly to me. Now they report directly to Patty, although I'm still involved, but it made sense to integrate that in a more formal planning section structure. But other than that, it exemplifies the divisions within the department. But as we say frequently, many projects cross our divisions and involve multiple talents and expertise across sections. So community planning, environmental planning, county planning, trails and open space, design and transportation. And as you've been getting to know those in even more detail over the last year and going forward, as we occasionally have updates to those sections, this kind of reflects that. So the work program structure, again, I think I covered the purpose up front. We're going to go through the focus topics and how the projects are oriented around there. Some are new projects, some are continuing. We have the same focus topics that we've had last year, still putting in. I'll put a note that we're coming to the cusp with the new comp plan. And this will all take place about a year from now, where we're dealing with the new comp plan with new organizational structure to that plan, new themes, and that will be an opportunity to integrate the work program very closely or align it with the structure of the comp plan. Something that we kind of had to backtrack and figure out and didn't do exactly on the last 3 years because the comp plan was created quite a while ago. But that's something I'm looking forward to, and an opportunity to kind of revamp and reset. The comprehensive plan was given its own chapter. That's probably the biggest change from this year to last year. And that was, I think, justified certainly by the amount of work going into it, the significance of it to our agency and to the county as a whole, and just all the activities happening. So it no longer made sense to just keep it as one of a few items in signature programs, but to give it its own identity and flesh that out a little more within the document. And then signature programs, this still exists and covers many of the previous things, including our grant program, a couple of other programs associated with boards such as open space and farmland preservation, and our planning education program. One of the new ones, though, is which has been active for a little while, is the America 250 PA effort. 2026, as you know, is the 250th anniversary. It means a lot to this region and to our county. The recovery office in the county is quarterbacking the county's efforts along with partners, and we're part of that group consulting. And as we're learning now, there's significant transportation issues, helping identify how we're going to take advantage of what events we're programming. So it will involve time and effort from our department as we coordinate with the county's leadership on that. Then we'll cover this in more detail. Core functions takes on, and it crosses over all sections, all the things we do almost on a day-to-day basis that shouldn't be overlooked or forgotten. Some of it is very important. And then finally, we'll end with the Community Planning Assistance Program, which you know well about, but it's an opportunity to look at, and in the document especially, to look at each community, what are the achievements and leading initiatives for the coming year are outlined there. And then finally, again, on structure, we have the same kind of setup as far as projects are described, the name and description. And important to identify which section is the lead on it. Sometimes it's more than one section. And sometimes other sections play a lesser role or contributing role. And that's noted as well. And then the time frame. This is an important concept that we say each year. It hasn't changed, but we look at things in terms of short, medium, and long. A short-term project is really intended to be completed within the next year, within 2025. Medium would take 1 to 2 years, so it ideally would be completed by the end of 2026. And then long-term applies to anything that will take 3 years or longer, or in some cases may have an indefinite endpoint or an ongoing circumstance. But those are all noted in the tables within each section, as you've seen, and I think is real important to how we look at it. So we'll start with the focus topics, and here we're going to have our gallery of presenters going through each one and talk about, we limited it to 3 achievements from the last year and 3 initiatives. Certainly, as you see in the document, there are many other projects worth noting, but we felt this is an opportunity to just really focus quickly on a few of them and bring them to your attention. They weren't already. So we'll begin with Patty, who is our only, I think, remote presenter. If she's able to cue in, she'll talk about placement.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Just making sure you can hear me.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, happy 2025. I'm going to talk about placemaking. And as you might recall, placemaking is our work with a lot of our partners to help create livable, walkable, vibrant spaces, especially in the public realm, but also some of the work we're doing within the county. And you'll see that in one of the projects for this new year. Next slide. So the 3 top achievements for 2024, the first one you see there is the Fort Washington Office Park landscape plans. You may remember that was about a several-year project where we did the landscaping for along the route of the cross-county trail that goes through the old Fort Washington Office Park that is actually trying to reimagine itself and is becoming more of a work, play, live space. But that we finished up in 2024. The second one you see is Collegeville Main Street Master Plan. We worked along with a private consultant, Durkin Edson, to help Collegeville really kind of confirm and cement their vision for their Main Street. And we were particularly involved in what that cross section of the streetscape looked at, some of the parking issues, some of the circulation around town as part of that vision plan. And then the third one you see is the Pennypack Park in Hatboro. We were brought in on this project. It's the old elementary school in Hatboro that the borough bought from the school district to have a borough park. And we helped the committee come to a compromise on how to best use this space. It's mostly in the floodplain, so there are environmental issues, but it was also used by the local soccer league. So again, we helped them come to a compromise that the committee recommended to council and that council approved at the end of the year. So let's look at some of the things we have coming up. So as you'll see in the work program, we have a lot of great things, all of them exciting, but I want to just highlight 3 in particular. And so the first one is the Erie Street Prison redevelopment. Planning was brought in basically at the very end of last year, beginning of 2024, as the project manager for this project. It originally had been slated for demolition, and the new commissioners have a new vision for this. They ran on the idea of this preservation. So we were put in charge of this project to do several things. Primary goal is preservation of as much of the prison property as we can. So that is one of the key goals. But then also how to redevelop this and the adjoining lot, that is a surface parking lot, into something that can be a vibrant asset to Norristown, bring in be an economic driver, and help create even expand the county campus and make it a more livable, walkable space. So we spent the year doing a exhaustive site conditions plan so that anybody trying to do this will know what's happening there. And we had a very robust public engagement process. Over 600 people came to our Engage Montco site, but we also had an open house in October. And then at the end of the year, an RFEI went out. So again, that is to request for expression of interest. And we're really excited and anticipating that we'll have a lot of the development community looking at this. And we hope to, we are looking to have some of those ideas being submitted by April. Next project. So this project, Keswick Village Streetscape, we were approached by Abington Township to help with looking at Keswick Avenue. As you may know, the Keswick Theater, Keswick Village, it does have a nice streetscape already that was done several, I'm gonna say probably a couple of decades ago, maybe 15 years ago or more. And it's just growing old. So they wanted us to come in and give it kind of a refresh. But as we had more conversations, it looks like they also have a bigger village area they want us to look at, maybe connections to a park that's nearby, possibly even connections to the Glenside train station to the west. So again, we will be working with them over this next year to really try to help understand what the community wants and what the township wants to do there to make Keswick an even more vibrant space. And then the third project.
Patty, John had a
Yeah.
question.
Jonathan had a
Patty, going back to the prison,
Yes.
what's the steps there? After you get responses to the RFEI?
Yes. So good question, Bob. That was Bob, right?
Jonathan.
John, I'm sorry. That was that was a good question. So the next steps after that would be, we have a committee that we're going to need to establish to look over all of the things that are submitted. And that will involve mostly people from the county, but there might be a couple outside interests, maybe from the Preservation Alliance and a couple others. But what we'll be doing is looking at what we think meets our goals the best and what we like best about what they're submitting. So again, we don't know what people might want to do there or what developers think will work there. We know what some people would like to see there, but we want the development community to decide what they can make work, what they can build and what will work there. So that committee will be looking at that. We are, because it's not a price tag associated with this, we are going to negotiate with maybe one or more of those development teams to see if we can flesh out what meets our goals even more or what they would bring to the table. That would be even better. And then I think the goal is by the fall to have chosen one of those development teams to go forward. And then we'd be working out a public-private partnership with the county and an MOU, or probably, to understand exactly who's responsible for each part of this project. Ultimately, the county would want to keep at least the prison property to always ensure that that is preserved in the future. But there's the opportunity for maybe parts of it to be sold eventually back to the developer, parts of the property. So again, it's kind of a messy, it's not a straightforward project, kind of tricky, but that would be the next steps.
So the selection really occurs after the review of the responses to this RFEI?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. And the third project, and again, the prison one was probably medium, a couple years, certainly our involvement in it. And the one from Keswick's a couple years. This project is probably more of a short-term project. We were approached by Collegeville to look at their community park and to come up with a new master plan for it. And in those conversations, we kind of asked about what was happening in other parks. So this past year, 2024, we spent doing a little bit of an analysis of what's happening in all their parks. And again, and also an analysis of the equipment at this park to see if it was safe and what if it needed to be replaced. And so this year, we're going to be working on this master plan for this community park for Collegeville. They would like to go for grants even as early, I think, as this spring. So this is a great project for one of our communities. And again, that's the reason we can do something like this is those community contracts we have that Eric's section, manages. Any questions?
Questions from board members? Nope. All work.
Great, thanks.
Next up is environmental resiliency. Hello, everybody, board members. Environmental resiliency involves incorporating ideas for sustainability and resilience, and also addressing the impacts of climate change, pretty much everything we do. Last year, We began implementation of the climate change vulnerability analysis by choosing 2 neighborhoods, one in Abington, one in Norristown, and looking at the impacts of extended heat events and flooding from climate change, and trying to identify some solutions or some projects that will help mitigate that. In the spring, we had a workshop. We invited all the Montgomery County EACs to attend, and we promoted the resources on our website and on the Conservation District's website that would help them in their work. And then in the fall, we were fortunate to host the We Can Serve PA Fall Gathering. It's a statewide gathering of EAC members. We had that at Temple Ambler campus, had about 120 participants for a full day of seminars and tours. And lastly, we began the bridge, the bridge from plan preparation to plan implementation. Thank you. For the Wissahickon and Water Quality Improvement Plan. The plan itself is in internal review. The revisions are almost done, and it's an internal review before it goes to municipal review. But in the meantime, we're forming a municipal consortium for the implementation period. This year, we'll continue our work on the Perkiomen mapping and flood study and the county stormwater plan update, which are 2 separate projects, but they're very similar. They have different funding sources, different timelines, and a little bit of different content. But for the most part, we're identifying significant flood areas, gathering data to determine why they flood, what we can do about it, proposing some solutions, developing them to a. That's right at the, yeah, it's just above Schweinsville.
Look, doesn't look too bad. You get over the bridge.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, that's not one of the problems.
Conservancy headquarters is to the lower left.
Yeah, and I believe that driveway went to a project that we.
Yeah, no, I.
Like 70.
No, I see, it's coming across to 29.
Right.
Where did the driveway go?
The driveway that's there went to a property that was removed under a flood mitigation project.
Some of them have been lifted and now some of them are gone.
Right. So we'll be identifying in the Perkiomen watershed, we'll be identifying 20 top areas. And in the rest of the county, we'll be identifying 60 priority areas and like I say, developing planning level solutions for them. The one difference is the Perkiomen mapping and flood study budget has money in it for an implementation project, a demonstration project. So we'll take one of those solutions and follow it through to completion, installation of whatever at a site to show that, the plan is being effective. We're continuing to collaborate with DVRPC and Chester County on some renewable energy, climate change mitigation, and greenhouse gas reduction projects. Chester County, we're working on a regional building energy conservation toolkit. The municipalities can use this to promote building energy conservation through their ordinances and realize some cost savings as well. DVRPC, we're working with them on several different tools for municipalities. One to help them enact building energy benchmarking programs so they can track progress. Another is the Solar Power Guide online platform that'll contain a solar model ordinance and an interactive mapping tool so they can also track.
Where is that? I'm always wanted.
This is this is Martin, just outside.
Mark.
Yeah.
They let you take pictures.
Google Earth does.
That's so easy to.
Yeah.
Drew was one of the drones that you were reading about.
That's right.
That's really cool.
Yeah, they're they had a few more green roofs. I really have a great example. But solar, they're going full tilt. And then lastly, we are beginning an update to the county's municipal waste management plan. This is a requirement that DEP has. Every 10 years, we have to update our municipal waste management plan. And the 2 parts that DEP looks for anyway are one, we have to show that we have adequate capacity to dispose of the county's trash for the next 10 years in regional facilities in Pennsylvania and neighboring. And the other is we have to show that we are promoting recycling to the greatest extent possible. We support municipal recycling programs. I'd also like to have a section in this plan this year looking at the permanent household hazardous waste facility. So we can get that kind of documented. We can get it in a plan that'll help us go for grant money and also keep it in front of the commissioners. Right now, we are forming an advisory committee. Then we'll begin looking for commitments for capacity, and we'll just stepwise move through the plan. And we have to have this done by 2026. So we're starting early because there's an extensive ratification program at the end. We have to have 50% of the municipalities representing 50% of the population ratify the plan in order for DEP approval. So that usually takes a while.
Is that recycling?
It includes recycling and
That picture.
this is a, yeah, it's a MRF, it's a sorting facility. I don't know which one it is.
I think it's that
It's not,
Mascaro?
it's not the Mascaro one, because
Oh, is it?
Mascaro, the interior is all green. I was looking for a slide that didn't
okay.
have
I have one.
corporate names blazoned all over it. And then, of course, the quiz on, who's the staff member on the right there?
It's wrong.
That's Veronica. She was on a tour and she joined the picking line for about a half an hour just to get the experience. Yeah, so we'll be working on the plan update. And that's it.
Right? Effective growth and preservation. Basically, this is about accommodating residential and business growth in a way that enhances our communities and preserves our quality of life. The three achievements from 2024. We'll start with Schwenksville. They've been updating their revitalization plan from 2010 and integrating the recommendations from their 2017 Main Street Design Guidelines. And they're also building upon the multi-regional greenway study, focusing on, in this update, the nature, tourism, and outdoor recreation. So one of the things they did to start that process off in 2024 was some extensive community engagement. They started a public survey and had a visioning workshop open house for the residents to attend. In our ongoing outreach for our transit-oriented development initiative, we had a number of things last year. We led a walking tour, mobile workshop for the community and transit impact conference that occurred last fall. We also are updating and have completed another walking tour for the Glenside Station. And then we also worked with Ambler to update their TOD ordinance with the recommendations of our model ordinance. And as a team effort, we're gonna pass it on to Bill and Ann here in a second.
Thanks, Eric. Hello, everybody. As we've talked about before here, the 2025 TIP, which was approved in 2024, included $39 million of federal funds for the county to engineer and construct about 7 miles of the cross-county trail. That federal funding will require only $4 million of county match. These funds are going to allow us to really accelerate the development of and completion of the remaining 12 miles of the cross-county trail in the county. And then I guess I'm controlling the slides here. Okay. In 2025, this is going forward to 2025. This coming year, we're going to be adjusting how we provide open space grants to municipalities and conservation-oriented nonprofits for open space preservation projects through a more formalized open space grant program. We are dedicating $2 million of county capital funds for this program. It'll be a more structured and rolling application process. It will also include prior to and during the application process, a very robust effort to raise awareness about the availability of these funds with the goal of a resulting broader distribution of open space funds across the county, because right now these funds tend to go to more proactive municipalities and organizations that know about the funds, and we want everybody to know across the county that they're available and to apply for them.
Hey, Bill, how?
Yes.
The $2 million, how is that scheduled out in the budget for a certain period of time?
So, as you know, the commissioners only approve the upcoming year's budget. So this year we have $3.5 million in the open space and park expansion line item of the capital budget. Of that, $2 million will be used for this grant program. Going forward in the projections, we have $3.5 million going out for the subsequent 4 years.
Before, okay, thank you. I know it's subject to change, it's just.
Yes.
Trying to think what the vision is.
Is that money to acquire open space?
It's money that's available to acquire open space, to purchase conservation easements, which is not a fee acquisition, but it's rather the overlay of a conservation easement. But the overarching goal is to permanently protect whatever that land is. whether it's through a direct acquisition or an easement.
2 million is for the grant program. What's the other 1.5 million?
That's reserved for acquisitions directly by the county.
Okay.
We want to have money in our pocket, so if we see a property that's worthy of preservation, we can do it.
No, it's not.
You're not gonna buy lots of acres.
Well, Jonathan, let me say that quickly, that this money is meant to be used in partnership with other funding sources. And the more successful applications are going to be those that include a match by the applying organization or municipality, as well as other funding sources like DCNR or other funds that can be acquired. We're going to be looking for a very mixed funding formula for these projects,
Okay.
with ours being just one piece of it.
So just one last question.
Yes.
Does the county have its eyes on any particular areas?
For county acquisitions,
Or, hey, watershed association, hey, NLP,
Priorities.
why don't we get together because this is a pretty nice ecological area that we could probably acquire in some way. Do we have like a map or an understanding of where those areas might be?
so we are just about to finish a draft of our open space and trails strategic plan, and that strategic plan does identify areas that are of higher priority. For example, floodplain areas along the Perkiomen Creek would be one example of that. But yes, the answer is yes, we will have a map and a description of that.
So the two issues that I see right away, I haven't had a chance to even look at, are what the match is going to be and who has to be first in.
Who has
Who
to,
has to be first in for these projects?
Okay.
It's often the concern that you can't get, and I don't know if it's still the way, you can't get other funding, DCNR funding or other money unless you have a commitment of somebody in. I'm not asking for an answer, but that's a concern. The other issue is when we do a program like this, we have to understand where the priorities are and what are the resources of the locations in which these priorities are. Because sometimes we have communities that have a harder time finding a match, but they're also the places where there are high priority areas.
yeah, understood.
And I'm sure that that's in your discussion, Bill.
It is, and I'm just gonna say as I walk away from the dais here that
That's right.
we're requiring a much lower match than other open space fund programs as a means of providing broader access to these funds and not to exclude.
But that also addresses the amount of money. So, you
Yes.
know, if you have.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, all these
Got it.
things, I'm sorry, it's just my
No, no, no.
history and it's kind of, so you don't have to answer, we can do this offline.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
Okay,
I was the door opener for Dulcie. I mean, I
Thank you.
understand that.
so I need to
Forgot
have.
the timing us. Just so you know, you're about to yank me off the stage. So back to talking about school district enrollment studies. You've already heard that we've got a couple in the queue for this year and a couple more potentially for later in the year. These are a popular product. The enrollment fluctuations that we saw during the pandemic, that people were pulling the kids out of the public school system, I think has largely ended. If anything, I get to be the one that goes back to these districts to say, you should expect an uptick in kindergarten enrollment because of the pandemic. That's coming. So,
Really?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A small one and a brief one, but yes. Birth rates were definitely up during 2020 and 2021. In any case, we are going to continue with this work to provide this information to school districts, and it helps them with their own facilities planning and planning for the future. And with that, I am going to,
Sorry.
yes,
We may have talked about this in previous conversations at each individual motion to approve. But do we solicit this feature that the planning commission does, or is this all by word of mouth as school districts talk to one another about this particular feature?
I don't advertise it. It's a time-consuming project, but
I'm just curious if suddenly it was a feature that the planning commission advertises they can help you with, whether we would be having to
We would.
turn them
We would
down.
need to
that we can't
hire
have.
another
Yeah, we need it.
person.
That's
I mean, at some point, I think Scott may have presented to the intermediate unit on the fact that we were doing this type of work, but the turnover at the administration level at school districts is akin to the turnover in municipal managers. There's only new people coming and going. So I do think that they talk to each other and to say that this is something that planning commission can do. We certainly are, we provide a good rate for this work.
Right.
We've served, I think, 15 of the 21 districts that cross over. So I'm pretty sure everyone's aware. And yeah, capacity would be the issue.
But we also get these contracts, or what are they, 3/4?
Yes, that's 75%.
So this really is a revenue, you know.
Yeah, I don't,
But
We provide a better rate than a private consultant would to do this
the
work.
motivation for me is the service we're providing.
oh, yeah.
that It's an accessible service to district.
All right, back to you.
Yep, last initiative under the effective growth and preservation. This is just a carryover actually from last year, but what we want to do is do a municipal guidebook for basically how to create, adopt and implement an official map. There are a number of publications across the state that have done a really good job of describing what it is and its relationship to the municipality's planning code. But we want to take a different tact and really look at the how to municipalities can put one together and implement it and some of the legal aspects of that.
I'm next. Why do I even bother saying? All right, housing attainability. This is, we talk about this a lot. It's this idea of creating more opportunities for housing affordability in the county. In 2024, we made good on our promise to update our characteristics of new and existing housing units report. This was something that we originally put together after the 2010 census. And I think you will be hearing about the results of this work in the next couple of months, but basically it is a deeper look at the household characteristics in our new and existing housing units, but also new and existing housing units by housing type. And the information that I think gets used the most from this report is looking at the average number of school children by housing type, which allows us to say with pretty good certainty that attached units tend to produce more children per household than, say, an apartment unit would. It's something that gets cited a lot by developers and others who are looking to show the impacts of proposed development in a community, but it is also really helpful for us as we do those school district enrollment studies. We need the information as well. We also worked in conjunction with our Office of Housing and the Commissioner's Office to put together the Homes for All Summit, which took place in April of last year, which was, I think, a well-attended event that brought out a lot of good information on both housing affordability and homelessness. And as an offshoot of that summit, we started doing local zoning audits to promote housing attainability, taking a really close look at municipal zoning ordinances from places that were interested in having us do this. It doesn't require a contract with us. Anyone is eligible to approach us to ask, to look at how we might be able to tweak local codes to encourage affordability going. In 2025, we are going to continue our look back at trying to find things that need modernizing. Now that we have crossed characteristics of new and existing units off our list, we're going to update our workforce housing publication series because we think this is something that could be very useful to our municipalities. This was a publication series for those of, I think it might just be Dulcie who might remember that we put this together. But we put this out maybe in the mid-aughts, so it's been a while since we have revisited this work. A lot of good information in it. Has some model ordinance language in it, but we're going to update the information that's in these reports, update the examples that we're providing and the guidance that we gave back then, and put it together in a easier to use package for people to revisit now. We're going to continue the housing audits that we started. We hope that more municipalities take us up on this offer. And in 2025, we also hope to continue to be a resource for the county and the region. A lot of things that we do here in this office that don't really get enough to, it's not enough to give it its own slide, but Scott and I, for example, take part in a weekly staff meeting that the Commissioner's Office has organized on how to address the lack of a permanent homeless facility. So they've been working very closely with John to make this Lansdale shelter happen, which is really exciting prospect. There are other possibilities in the works, but that's something that we're doing. I sit on the Continuum of Care Board, which helps facilitate funding allocations to projects and the funds that are allocated through HUD. We are here as a resource. We want to make sure that we have the time available to put staff time towards these various projects. And passing it back to Bill to talk about Chris. Great.
Okay, 3 of our accomplishments from 2024. We completed the final 850 feet of the Pennypack Trail in Rockledge Borough. This was the final portion of the Pennypack Trail within Montgomery County. It was also representative of the 100th. We exceeded the 100th mile of county-owned trails within Montgomery County. So this was a short piece, but it got us over that finish line of 100 miles countywide. The Schuylkill River Trail 422 connector project in Lower Pottsgrove Township was fully designed and bid in 2024, and we're moving into construction in the coming weeks. That should start sometime in March, and we anticipate that will be finished by the end of this year. And then lastly, the Trail Junction Center, a project that has been around for many years, was fully designed and all the permits were secured in 2024. It was advertised on this past Monday, and we anticipate the contracts will be signed sometime in April with a soon thereafter construction start, and we anticipate the construction will last about 15 months, which would take us into mid-2026 for a ribbon cutting on that facility. Going forward into 2025 with the federal funding that we received in the TIP from the 2025 TIP, along with county capital funds, all of the cross-county trail segments that you see here on this slide are active. You don't see them yet, hold on. There we go. All of the segments that you see here shown in red circles are active projects on the cross-county trail. 5 of these segments are or will be in engineering shortly, and one, the cross-county portion in Erdenheim Farm will move into construction this year. In all, 9 miles of the cross-county trail will be built as a result of these projects. Those 9 miles of the 12 that remain to be built in the county. That's a big deal. At the opposite side of the county.
That's a big deal.
That's a
I
big
mean,
deal.
you said that so quietly because you have so much on your plate that you move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm trying not to think too much about it. So.
No, I know, but I mean, for us to recognize the kind of work that's coming out of your office, I know that you're breathing very fast because you have to get through this, but I want to take the time to tell you how appreciative we should be as a county, not just as a planning commission, that all of this work is getting done, because it's astounding. If you just even read it, it's an astounding amount.
Thanks, Dulcie. We appreciate that. Yeah.
The cross-county trail, are you talking about?
I'm talking about all of
the
them.
trails.
You look at all the projects that are being done and how much the increase in how we're moving forward on these projects that as other transportation take, planning, acquisition, construction. It's remarkable. Yes, it's remarkable.
Thanks, appreciate that. So at the other side of the county from where we're just looking, engineering construction of a 1 mile segment of the Sunrise Trail will take place at the Girl Scouts Camp Laughing Waters property in New Hanover Township. This will represent, when that trail is ultimately and fully built out, will be literally the final piece of the Sunrise Trail. We are using a trail easement that was secured as part of the Camp Laughing Waters preservation project that was completed back in 2023. And this project, which will include a trail that will run through that blue area on the slide, will also include a trailhead parking lot and a footbridge at the left-hand side of that slide along New Hanover Square Road. And lastly,
Does that
yes.
connect to other things?
At the, so down here, no, over there, ultimately, yes. This is literally the terminus of what would be the Sunrise Trail
For now.
for now, yeah.
Trail should never terminate, they should continue.
Well, that's someone else's computer. Lastly, Trails Advisory Committee, this is an idea that's been brewing for some time. As you know, trail development is a huge part of our work. I would guess somewhere around 80 or 90% of our effort goes toward trail development. And while the Open Space Board provides input on trails, it was determined that a group of trail stakeholders with an interest and expertise in trails and issues specific to trails like equity, connecting into local communities would really benefit our work. So that this is something that we're going to be creating this year and kicking off this year. And it's going to address not just planning of trails, but also operational issues as well. And this was actually the brainchild of Brian Olzak, so I have to give him
Brian.
a little
I
bit
knew
of
it
kudos.
was short-term last,
Yeah,
the last one, and it was short-term again this one, so this, we're gonna have an endpoint.
yeah, we got distracted. Is the nice way to
How
say
do
it.
people get on these boards? Is this gonna be advertised with the county as they have with other things? And you probably have some idea of people that you can, encourage to apply, correct?
Well, this committee will be, I guess, different than a board.
Yeah, it won't be a full
Yeah.
formal board.
So
More
you're
work.
right,
We'll probably get people and ask them.
it's
to
like an
join.
EAC, kind of.
Thanks.
For transportation evolution. Our top three achievements from 2024 was number one, Ridge Pike Section D, right up your alley there, Dulcie. That was completed substantially back in December, and we had ribbon cutting in November. It was largely completed. Excuse me. It's a $17 million project, and we did it start to finish in 8 years. Jonathan, all the phases that you mentioned, from starting PE to wrapping up construction, 8 years, which actually is probably about half the time it would take if our commissioners had decided to take this to the tip. They funded this entirely with county money. And so we're proud to say that we got it out in what I would deem as half the time. The aviation policy plan was probably the first ever type of in-depth look that the county and the planning commission has released on aviation issues here in Montgomery County. And it focuses on things that every airport needs to survive and to thrive. And we talk a little bit about technology and emerging trends, but also things that the county can do and that our other partners can do as well. So we took us about a year and a half, and we got that released. And then lastly, the online map of transportation grants. That is something that really has been in the works for maybe 12, 13 years. When Act 89 was passed back in 2013, that opened the floodgates to particularly state grants for transportation projects. And we started keeping tabs on it back then. I remember putting together the first spreadsheet. And over time, Matt and Andrew Turner as well, and others have kept tabs on all of the projects that come in for all sorts of different grants. So we were finally able to put it into GIS, map it, and now it's something that our community planners and others internally can use. And also the public can look at it and see what investment has been made in their community with these programs.
Now, where do drones come in? Do they come in under aviation policy or not?
Yeah, they do. They're talked about a little bit.
Is that a concern that we have to?
Only if there's.
Well,
Over your house, Stephen.
we don't necessarily, in that plan, we don't necessarily deal with the everyday retail type drones, you fly up. These are more things that might be built more for delivery, or for carrying a payload of some sort. Payload is probably the wrong term. That sounds like it's more, but those are bigger things that maybe sometimes they can take off vertically, other times they need a runway. That's the type of more commercial grade drones that we get into in our plan.
Matt, the airports in Montgomery County, Waynes, Limerick, Pottstown, that's it?
That was very good. Yeah, and only Pottstown is publicly owned. So that sets the stage for presumably some things for Montco 2050 if we want to dive in a little bit more towards aviation. We have this plan to guide us. So things that we want to do in 2015. The first one is a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we are receiving. It was awarded to us back in November. We have to get the contract signed here this winter. But it's a $400,000 grant plus another $100,000 in matching funds from the county. And this is something that we're going to be using to look at the 75 miles of county-owned roads that we talked about a little bit earlier today. The second one is starting construction on the Ridge Pike Improvement Project, Section A. And I do not want to be up here this time next year with the same slide saying we're going to do this in 2026. I want us to start this year. We're on track, but we have some issues we're still working through with Norfolk Southern of all things. So this is the piece that's closest to Norristown. It's on the farther and western edge, and that's the turnpike right here. And that bridge in particular has to be replaced with a bigger one so that it creates room underneath it for the Lafayette Street interchange. So this is a key piece to achieving one of the county's long-term, like 25-year goals, Lafayette interchange. And then lastly here, the electric vehicles tool. This is an online platform that Matt Popek and John Lesher and I'm trying to remember, it was Margot and Kevin and Tim Kenichi, Rob and Anastasia. They've all been working behind the scenes on putting this together, and it's in a beta form. And so this is just a toolkit for municipalities and partners to use. Contains a model ordinance that Tim worked hard on, has some mapping of existing chargers, potential charger locations. Rob worked on that. And it has dives into the issues of EVs a little bit. So this is something that we're going to be having wrapped up here probably the next couple of months at the latest, maybe sooner, and that'll be out and about in the world. And with that, send it over for Plan Technology and Tools.
Great. Thanks, and I'll step back in for this. This is the seventh and final of the focus topics, a little different than the previous ones, in that those were planning issues. This is to enable us to address all those issues and looking towards technology in the way we both two facets, communicate to the public or give them resources, as well as our own analytical abilities using technology and advances that we now have. So, and it's much like a transportation project or a road project. It's some of these things take quite a while to build, and then you get to the final implementation, and it's a great moment. One of the things we did last year was the municipal survey of MCPC 247 letters, which was, again, it had been about 10 years since the last effort in that regard. And so it was a good time to reassess, see how our letters are working. I think we made a lot of improvements over the 10 years. And I think we affirmed some of that through the results of the survey. But we also got some new ideas and some areas to look at, to work on, continuing to improve this. And then one of the big moments for me was finally seeing the MCPC Subdivision and Land Development Reviews portal come out to be released to the public. That also was a lot went behind the development of that, including the whole digitization of that entire process. But now that we had it, we unleashed it, and it's available to both the public and staff. Anyone can now look at any application really back since about 2008 and up to the most recent month and get all the files, essentially a digital file cap, and explore it on a map basis as well. And then finally, this one I don't think you've seen yet. It has been released, and we're going to highlight it a little bit as part of a focus on agriculture in the next month or two, as we start to hope to see the weather tick up or the temperature tick up. Field to Family Interactive Food and Agritourism Map project, Steve Zabinski, we're working on with our GIS staff, and brings opportunity to let people explore and know where they can actually take advantage of our farming activity and the products they offer. So for 2025, we'll use that survey and update our 247 training manual. When we get staff turnover and new people writing letters, that's a critical time. Make sure that we're bringing people onboarding in the right way so that there's not a gap in the level of quality as well as effectiveness of our letters. And then the website itself, we had this on last year, and this is one of those, it's been a little bit of a slow crawl. A lot of things, it's easy to put this one off and address more pressing issues. But it's important. We feel our user interface, our organizational structure of the website is still in strong need of updating and overhaul. Plus, we also have the fact that the county's website through all departments has a consultant on board to overhaul that aspect. And that's going to probably take even a little longer, 12 to 18 months. So if we can get our ducks in a row and our website to the point we want it, then we'll be more easily able to transition and hopefully inform the new countywide website with some of the things that we identify and learn. And then finally, the Planning Data Hub is another example. We built, the data portal has been around since about 2012, and it is admittedly very long in the tooth as far as how it looks and the resources it employed back then. But it was important and still allows a place to put our data and let people access it. There's a lot of new ways to do that, and we have a built-up GIS staff that's going to help us along with county planning to figure out how we can take advantage of what's on the market now and how we can make the data more accessible and usable for both us and our constituents. So now we'll have Ann jump up again. Well, yeah.
In
Sure.
thinking ahead on what, with the new 2050 plan, the graphics for what that plan is going to be bounded, what it's going to stand on as we go to do the website, I think that should be coordinated, don't you? In some
Yes.
way, so we don't launch something and then have to change it because, I mean, we've been using that, the graphics from 2040 for all of our stuff. So.
Okay, so we have new graphics already for 2050, where that part of, well, you're about to hear about it. We'll talk about the drafting and design of the new plan, which we haven't, other than like logos and the stuff.
Fine. I'm just saying, you know, I'm just thinking as we're trying to sync up these things, we shouldn't be putting up a whole new website and then having to change graphics.
Right. No, the point of this one is really to just reorganize and make it more
User friendly.
yeah, intuitive. Yeah. Which has been a long goal. We just haven't never accomplished it. And so, yeah, those things are juggling, and how we over this year, we'll be discussing how to treat the new plan and what opportunities. Right now, we're already using like 2 other platforms that aren't on the county website, Engage Montco, the online map hub. Those are new tools that have helped us with the existing conditions, and we'll have other features moving forward. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so comprehensive plan. You've already heard about. We are working to create the vision plan, the actual document for Montco 2050, which in and of itself is a lot of work and broken into several different tasks. I've already sort of talked about some of them as we presented on the transportation side of the plan earlier. We're going to work with our advisory committee to refine the themes and structure of the document, which I suppose sort of touches upon the whole look of the document. Refining the goals and action steps that we hope the county will be able to take going forward. Putting together the policy maps. That's a big task. Matt showed you the land use plan that is part of our comprehensive plan already. We are currently updating the existing land use map, which then feeds into how we might envision the county in the future, what our existing land uses might become as we go forward. We're also working on project inventories, making sure that we have a good handle on not just the transportation projects that make it onto the tip, but also the major environmental trail and other capital projects that we would like to identify in this document to queue us up for potential funding opportunities in the future. And then lastly, an implementation strategy. How will this all get done? Hopefully by people more than just the county planning section. A lot of work that will be outlined in this document, and we need to make sure that we are figuring out a way to get it all into place. And then all of the other related tasks that go along with Montco 2050, the advisory committee will continue to meet throughout the duration of 2025. We continue to coordinate with other county departments and the commissioners and their staff to make sure that we are taking their work into account and their goals and their planning. The outreach and engagement that takes place to make sure that the public has a chance to weigh in on what we are thinking. And then lastly, the work that our graphics staff will do to draft and design the actual document and the related work. So with that, Scott, signature program.
Yeah, and you're aware of most of these longstanding things, including the implementation of the current comprehensive plan, Montco 2040, as well as the grant program itself. And then our other programs that have boards attached, open space and farmland preservation, will continue operating in their capacity. And the Open Space Board will be part of that open space grant program, which is why there's not a committee of these members. We already have a entity that's well tuned and versed in that, so we're going to utilize that for that program. And then America 250 PA, which I mentioned in the front. And then on the planning education side of things, Planning Smarter will continue. Hoping to transform it a little bit. We're still in the thinking process on this. But rather than, focus on, okay, let's have an event on this topic and do it here on this day. I think we want to consolidate a more thematic, maybe not quite half day, almost like mini conference in a place, and really provide value for people able to take time out of their schedule to join us and really focus on that. So look forward to that. We'll be having discussions with you on that. And then Montgomery Awards will continue in its excellence. I think we're still keeping to the November timeline, although that always is a question. And the APA-PA conference, this department, this county is so involved in a really impressive way, if people don't know it, both at the regional chapter, Southeast chapter level and the state level. Patty serves as one of the 4 officers on that leadership. And next year it'll be in Harrisburg, so a little better than Erie. Hopefully we get a lot of our staff out to participate in that as well. And then equity policy is a little different from those other items, but still we talked to you about that a few months ago and trying to bring that to the finish line in early 2025 with the implementation. And then core functions. This is where we put, I will not say everything else, because I think that diminishes it. But there's, I think 4 pages in here with tables like you see on the right, but highlights a number of things. And they might be small, they might be large, none more larger than our Act 247 review process, which is not just, the planners writing the letters, but all of the infrastructure that allows us to accept those and sort through them and deal with, over 300 applications that come into our office each year, along with the fees that come with them. And then in addition, budgeting occurs in this section, the data reports out of the county section, environmental with the MS4 stormwater permits, grant management across several sections, agency coordination. Almost every section has specific agencies, whether it's DVRPC or PennDOT or other counties and regional partnerships and watersheds, runs the gamut. Social media, our communications continues to be outstanding in keeping our presence alive in social media posts and informing the general public, which is probably the best way to get attention these days. And graphic design, so integral to so many projects and how things look and how they come out and how they're used. And the office administration, of course, keeps where we are going. So Eric will finish with community planning.
Just a quick highlight. I encourage you to go through the work program and look at all the 34 contracts and all the work that's being done and was done in 2024. A lot of variety of work and again, the sheer volume of work that the community planners pump out is always pretty incredible. We have 34 contracts in 2024. We did add Hatfield Borough for a comprehensive plan update. We're still working through the 4 regional planning commissions and working closely with them. We sort of decided upon a multi-year plan for adjustments to our fee structure to maintain our 50% recovery goal. And then, of course, the contract highlights in the plan itself and the work program itself. Just some highlights from 2024. We did do a full zoning rewrite for Upper Moreland Township, big project which was adopted. The Souderton Revitalization Plan was also adopted last year. We did some landscape regulations for multiple municipalities, Upper Gwinnett and Lower Pottsgrove, revised their landscape regulations and updated their tree planting list. And then another example of the extensive collaboration we do with our design and urban planners. And so we did a number of master park plans, one for Red Hill Borough. And we also did a number of ordinance testing for Lower Salford Township and their Village Commercial District, as well as the New Hanover Township and their Light Industrial District. So we do a lot of work with design and they support us and collaborate with us on a number of projects. Heading into 2025, it'll be really the year of the comprehensive plan. We have 7 municipal comprehensive plans that we're working on, 5 of which should get completed in 2025. And we're still wrapping up 3 of our regional comprehensive plan updates. Those 3 for the Indian Valley, Central Perk, and Pottstown should also be completed this year, maybe adoption into 2026, but a lot of comprehensive plan work. And then as you'll see in the work program, just a lot of trail planning, some additional subdivision ordinance updates, and a lot of zoning work as well.
And before we open it up here to further discussion, I just want to also mention Structurally, the document also includes an appendix, which basically just takes each of our actual sections and looks at their achievements and initiatives for the next year solely based on their kind of internal section dynamics and program. It's more to our benefit than it serves anyone else, but that's what that is and why it's there. And then finally, I just want to acknowledge and say, it's a long and difficult process to get from sometime in September or October to thinking about this to delivering it here today. And I'm fortunate to have such great sections and section management that not only can take any ideas I have and help flesh it out and bring them to a workable product, but also more importantly, bringing their ideas in and filling in the work program with so much good activity and for the benefit of Montgomery County. So I'll close there and open up the board.
Well, a lot in front of us. And obviously always short on time, so I just want to open it up to board members for comments, questions.
I would just generally say that's really quite an impressive document, and I think over the past 2 years, as the format has changed, I think it's become much more readable and understandable, and it's easy to follow along and make sense of what you guys are working on. So I commend you all for the amount of work that you guys do every year that we don't even know about. This is a snapshot in time, right? So thank you all for what you do. Very nice.
One thing I had reached out personally to Marley for her graphics on county planning that I hope a lot of you saw. She did a great job in showing where everybody saw this. I mean, that's really helpful. I mean, with some of us who are visual learners, I mean, it's great. And just to echo, and I tried to stop poor Bill, who is probably thinking about the next 5 things he has to do in the next 5 hours. We need to recognize the amount of work, whether it's trails, whether it's the 2050 plan, whether it's all the stuff that's being done in all the departments. I mean, the water, I get confused with the Perkiomen, I'm sure you do, with this one and that one and how they overlap. All of this is churned out of, are we 42? What are we now? 42 staff?
44 positions.
44 positions. It's a humongous amount of work and everybody seems to be working full stop. So thank you, and let's be cautious of our workload for people who are doing all this work, because that is really important, having an effective product that we don't burn our people out trying to get from point A to a goal.
Great point. And we are focused. We know a lot of these things drag on, and there are times like, oh, we didn't do as much as we thought we would on that, but we know why. I feel better this year, I think, than I have others. Every year you look at it after, especially after this presentation, like, wow, that is a lot. How are we gonna do all that? I don't know. It probably is the same amount, but it feels like we have it more managed, or we know how it's gonna progress, and we have, better things in place, and this just comes from the people here and their time.
And thank you to Yvonne, who is now semi-member of the planning commission. I like that you can make a comment because she has a good kind of overview of what we're doing now.
Speaking of work, I can't keep leaving. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Scott, do we ever put out press releases on like this sort of thing, in your review of the magazines?
We do a little bit of that with our implementation report, which is coming in a week or two, and you'll see it next month for the comp plan. That's kind of more of the public focus. That was a big change with this work program to make it a public document and emphasize on our website. Dulcie gave the great idea this morning of putting links on the digital document that take you to projects where there's a map or a product page, and that we'll do that. So press release, I hadn't thought about that. I'll definitely give it some thought. And right, we do the annual report, which in past years dragged a little too far. This year we have it on target for a February release at least, which is better. That's more of the, I think, the public relations document.
Anybody, is Bob or also online?
Yeah, I sound like a broken record, but every time you know, someone makes a presentation, it enlightens me to the depth of the planning commission and all the members, you know, from the top to the person who was just hired last week to make prints or mail out parcels or something. But I mean, everybody just amazes me with the work that they can get done in the timeframes that, you know, that are forced upon them. And the end result is, it's just mind boggling. So keep up the good work. Please don't change anybody. And other than maybe like the director or somebody like that. But that all being said, I just think everybody does a great job there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think the only comment I would make is, you know, a few years ago, you changed the structure of the work program. And I think as we've now have a few years under our belt with this type of format, it's taken not just the planning of the county, but also planning of the planning commission's role in the county and how it will affect, you know, the near future and the distant future, and how we move through the issues that arise in the county, the issues that we've identified and are trying to solve, or at least trying to present solutions that may be viable. And but the work program clearly states the way that the planning commission staff thinks about the future of the county. It thinks about how every piece of the puzzle meshes with each other and gives a clear understanding, and we keep working through parts of the puzzle every year and how it clearly works through solutions and what the things are on the horizon that are going to have to be addressed or dealt with. And I think to me, it's comforting to know that there is that continuity. I think the way work program is laid out, I think the way that the staff works together, and I think the way it's presented clearly shows that there are not silos being formed in the planning commission, that it is everybody linking what they're doing together. And I think that just is emblematic of the leadership, directors, and staff working together. So I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing all those things happening this year, and those long range tasks happening in the future, and hopefully be around for that. And I think it's appreciated, certainly by me, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board, but clearly by their comments and reception to what is given to us. I think it's clear that we appreciate that work. So
Thank you. Scott, do you ever reach out to your counterparts at the other counties and either look at each other or share documents like this to kind of see, you know, how much further ahead we are than our neighbors? I'd just be kind of curious.
They don't invite us to those meetings for some reason. No, I don't think that direct kind of sit down happens. But there's a lot. I know the other directors pretty well, and there's lots of projects and efforts, and certainly DVRPC brings us together a lot. So whether we, depending on who it is and which county, there's some comparative notes that have taken place, but it's I don't know. We have that powwow to that extent, unless we're actually talking about an issue that affects all of us.
it's also a policy decision in the counties too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's a bi-directional relationship here. It's policy decisions of the county government, commissioners in each of the counties. But it's also I think it's also the confidence level that has been built up over years, certainly prior to my involvement in the board. But the confidence level of the governing body to the department, the planning commission department, to see that all of these issues that are run or where the planning commission touches, and how much the planning commission is involved in is there's that, like I said, there's a bi-directional relationship there. And I think that may be different. I think that's different. I'll make it emphatic. I think that's different in other counties.
It is.
And I know somebody that's involved in the Bucks County Planning Commission, and there's certainly not that synergy. I think those,
Between the
Move
county
to have-
commissioners and the planning staff?
yes, yeah. And I think that's just years and years of good staff members and good work that has come out of the Planning Commission to build that confidence level and to build that portfolio of experience and work. And, you know, I think that's the difference I think we see in Montgomery County than I think you see in the more typical relationship of a planning commission and the county government.
And this past January, we had the unique, essentially 3 new commissioners, you know, one had been there a year, but we hadn't experienced that for a while. Like it'd been more of a gradual, one person leave, another one come in, you know, all that. But there's certainly a few nights of restlessness and sweat on my brow over how that was going to happen and how we were going to come out of it. And, you know, I won't say, you know, everything's perfect and roses everywhere, but the fact that they got that message pretty quickly, and we tried to convey it as much as we could, but that they got it and saw it and continue to see it is
And rightfully so, because the advisors that they go to, Lee, I mean, I've had conversations with such, and I'm sure other board members have had. I mean, it's not easily ignored the amount of influence and involvement that the planning commission has in county government.
And the evidence of success is in the workload and the product.
Right.
Yeah.
and not just sniffing around, but you know, this board's contribution to that and that your the private discussions or whatnot helps immeasurably too. We know that happens at different times. So thank you for that.
Recognized as being a think tank for policy, I mean, really and truly, I mean, we really present good ideas and we present them thoughtfully with a politically aware kind of culture on how you get things done.
And we may run over time a little bit every once in a while.
First and foremost, I enjoyed every bit of this today. The detail orientation here is absolutely phenomenal. That is really what grabs my attention. Very detail oriented, and every single solitary, you know, information you provided, you know, just, I mean, I didn't have any questions to ask because it's right there if you just listen. So thank you so very much for that, and you being on both sides of the fence here. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, it's more than just this group, but we've lots of.
Yeah, you're right. Sure, absolutely. So I know we're running short on time, if not over on time. So are there any other comments on that work program and our staff or anybody online? If not, then I'll ask Scott to just run right into his director's report. Sure. Thank you.
They run back to their desk and keep working.
Yes, just a few things. I'll start with staff as always. Our sad news to announce today, Brian Olszak will be leaving us. 10 years at the commission, both in community planning and in open space and trails. Has been a tremendous asset and employee, and we are certainly going to miss him. And happy for him as he moves to Georgetown, Delaware, as the community development director.
Nice.
As of December.
Georgetown, Delaware?
You're the Georgetown, Delaware. You'll get to know it soon. Soon to be known for its community development. So anyway, that will be a new position open. So we currently have 3 open positions. That one has not been posted yet, but we're in process with that. We'll let Brian go out the door before we grab his desk. Transportation planner one continues. Interviews have been strong for that, and we are very, very close to assistant design section manager. So good news on that front.
Well, by the next board meeting, we might have both of those filled, you know, now let transportation planner is so.
Oh, that's news to me. Great. Great.
And has been accepted?
Yeah, maybe the offer and he accepted it.
Okay.
Nice.
This Friday, I want to acknowledge staff. This is the annual county's staff service pins where they acknowledge in 5-year increments people who have been at the county for 10 years or longer. We have this year they're doing a luncheon rather than just a ceremony at the courthouse. So that's nice. I want to acknowledge, well, Brian, I don't know if you're going to show up for your pin or not, but you're certainly welcome to the lunch. John Lesher, who has been here 15 years. Matt Edmond, 20 years. Barry Jeffries, 25 years, who was that? And bringing the trophy home, Rita McKelvey, 40 years.
Wow.
Jeez. Oh my.
Actually not mine, but yes, so that's we'll be celebrating their activity. It was mentioned earlier that we just finished our third TOD walking guide for Glenside, joining Conshohocken and Lansdale as existing ones. We have another one in the works as well. So that continues, we put those out there and publicize them online. Can't cover the budget last time, but that was adopted and everything I said last month applied. No changes, so we're happy about the outcomes of that process. Montco 2040 grant program is now open. The deadline for that is March 1st. And I also want to, this was also mentioned, but I did want to take a second to acknowledge Lansdale and its borough manager serves on our board, Mr. Ernst. And the partnership with the county and finding an opportunity for a short-term supportive housing facility. This has made a lot of headlines and been in the news and is one of the most critical issues for the people involved and for our county. And Lansdale really stepped up to make something happen. And that we hope to see that result actually open within a month or so.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And really make an impact on citizens and those struggling.
Really?
Mr. Ernst.
Oh, yeah. I had absolutely nothing to do with it except be involved in all the meetings and had good people that really know what to do and how to get it done quickly. And so
That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Ernst.
You're welcome, Mr. Clark.
And then just to highlight, the voting is open for Pennsylvania's River of the Year. There are 3 candidates and the Perkiomen Creek is one of them.
Continues to be one of them.
Continues to be one of them.
Against the what is the Delaware and what else?
The Delaware and the Yogiani.
Oh, no, the
Somebody
Yucca.
correct me.
Yucca.
Should be Yogi. Somebody from Pittsburgh.
Oh, yes. That's the one with the rafting and the.
Great water rafting.
Yeah,
Whitewater
great
rafting
water,
and
right.
alligator.
That's where they left at the game. They left.
Here's the bad news, though. We got real clear politics on our, feeding us poll information on a daily basis. Delaware holds 35% of the vote. The Y one holds 34%. And Perkiomen's at 30%. So we got some work to do, some ballast stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you just Google PA River of the Year, you'll find it. It's actually the Pennsylvania Organization of Watersheds and Rivers.
Is this like baseball all-star voting? You can vote as much as you want?
Not today. There's probably a way.
Once a day.
You
get the supply every day now.
Once a day?
Yeah, I'll do it directly.
By email, so probably they've dwindled them down.
Do you have to live in Montgomery County to vote, or can I solicit my children and grandchildren to vote?
I doubt it works.
You don't have to live in. Yeah, you don't have to live here.
Yeah,
There is actually an award
from like
attached.
30 different places.
Like $10,000 towards promoting events for the next year,
Exactly.
celebrating that river.
We can send out the link.
There's just recognition, really. Okay, that's all I have. The event list, which I'll do.
Are there any other party comments from board members? Anybody staff? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. So moved. Second. All in favor? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Tom consent.